I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And we switched up the show a little bit. Usually we lead off with personality politics. Today we're going to get right into what's going on in Minnesota and go into U.S. politics. Same section markers as religion, MAHA, the U.S., Canada, Australia, and the rest of geopolitics, just in a different order today. If you're not subscribed, please do so. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and thanks for everybody that got us to 700 subscribers.
Yes, we reached 700 over the weekend, so thank you so much to everybody. And indeed, again, please don't forget to subscribe. And we also read all the comments, so if you have anything to say that you want to be read out loud, we will respond to them, read them, and interact with you, because that's the whole point of having a live show.
Yeah.
We also have a few edited videos we've started releasing that is news or things that we usually don't cover on the channel or that we haven't covered on a live stream. So please go watch those as well. Go give them some love. And well, let's start with the US because there's a bunch of messiness happening over there. And indeed, oh, sorry. No, there we go. I'm messing up. It looks like I haven't done this for a while. From Andy No, and we saw this happening over the weekend, from Minneapolis, anti-Islam activist Jake Lang, who we have our own opinions about, is surrounded by a far-left mob who pull him down from a ledge and try to hit him severely, I will say.
Yeah, and we've covered different aspects of what's going on in Minnesota, but I really get a strange feeling from what's going on in Minnesota, much to how I get a strange feeling of what's going on in Iran. In Iran, it's an obvious color revolution. Here, what we kind of have are both the left and right that have maybe different long-term goals. The left has time and time again, try to get these No Kings protests to really crack off, to give pushback against Trump and maybe have impeachment on him if they can win the midterms. With the right, I would be at least looking at the fact that they possibly want to create a police state and bring in a digital ID. So although I am for these I am for ICE agents going in there, taking out illegal immigrants and looking into the corruption, I would be very wary of the government trying to strip freedoms and bring a digital ID in on the back of that. Jake Lang is a right-wing agitator. He's constantly burning Qurans, smacking bacon against the Qurans. I mean, yes, that's protected free speech, but when you go into situations like this and you're agitating like he is, he looks to me like he may be a Fed, number one. But number two, I always expected something like this to happen to him. Now, I don't like the fact that there was violence, but he did get out with his life. So I guess
but
that's
it also shows the violence and the rhetoric and the wanting to have more and more violence and escalating it. So from the far left protesters, I will say.
Okay, let's get into it. And yeah, right about here, he's about to get dragged into the crowd, into the abyss. And I really thought he was going to end up at the hospital. He was severely hurt, blood coming out of his head, but he did survive. Let's continue to play. Okay, and you can leave it there. And he just gets absolutely erased. I mean, he just disappears into that crowd. Thousands upon thousands of people just start storming the center. I mean, it's something you would expect to see out of a movie.
Unfortunately, but I didn't stop there. There's more footage. And if you hear that they're always playing music at this protest, and people might wonder why. Usually it is so people that are recording cannot get a copyright strike or cannot use the footage of the protest. That's why they play music so loud and random music that they know will probably get a copyright strike.
But the best way around it is just to play it at 1.25 speed, so I don't think we'll get dinged.
But I'm saying like that's why there was holiday music playing while they were doing that, because it seems pretty out of place, but that's why they do it. From Timcast News, footage shows Jake Lang injured as he attempts to flee an escalating confrontation in Minneapolis, where tensions quickly turned physical. I'm sorry about the bad luck.
My God, I mean, they just would not let this guy escape. And if you don't know who Jake Lang is, he was originally part of the January 6 individuals at the Capitol. He was going to do a lot of time until Trump gave him a pardon. He was one of the major figures within the prison that was organizing things like that. He's been very outspoken since, but I don't know if he was radicalized in prison or he is working for an intelligence agency, because he really pushes the boundaries and tries to get violence to kind of ensue anywhere he goes.
Well, that is your theory about all of any influencers, that they're probably connected to some sort of agency. And with him, I mean, we do know that this kind of escalating and going out to protest and almost trying to see if someone will do something to you is a good, unfortunate tactic to get more people to look at you and see what you're doing and follow you and support you. But at the same time, the protests, apart from Jake Lang, have been getting more and more violent. The rhetoric has continued to escalate, and Tim Walz and Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, seem to not care at all, and to actually incite it and continue to encourage it, which I think something should be done about that. But I don't know what powers the federal government has to stop them from continuing to escalate the rhetoric, getting to a point where it's getting dangerous for people that aren't even part of the protest.
Look, it's free speech. You let free speech roll until it turns to violence, and then you step in, period.
But we continue to see violence.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, I'm very cautious of I am definitely on the side of law enforcement here. That being said, I don't want to see freedom stripped. I don't want to see them as an excuse to bring digital ID. I don't want to see them make a police state. This is the kind of incident you want to kind of start adapting digital ID to bring in a police state to strip freedoms from people. So the right may be supportive of this. I know I am, but you have to be very cautious when they try to bring laws in on the back of these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there has to be some sort of order brought back to Minneapolis and Minnesota.
Yeah, you have police, you have military.
But they've been told to stand down by Tim Walz. And I fear eventually something even graver will happen.
Tim Walz does not control the military. He does not control federal agents.
But he
controls state. He only controls state.
They still haven't sent over any kind of reinforcements or sufficient reinforcements, I will say.
Okay.
No?
Yeah, they have. ICE agents are federal agents, and they brought in more ICE agents, and
but they're there to carry out federal investigations. They're not there to control protests and people, local citizens that are going insane, and people that get either flown over or driven over to participate in the protests and continue to agitate.
Well, and that's one of the things when it happens in a blue state, that he is going to tell law enforcement to stand down, because they want a no kings incident. They want to ramp this up to where it gets a lot of national attention. Both the left and the right have long-term goals here that they want most likely to happen. Okay, let's go into the
And
next
let's
part
see
of this
the
story.
conclusion. Well, not the conclusion, but what happened right after from Julio Rosas. After being chased by the anti-ICE crowd through several city blocks and a building, some in the crowd attacked Jake Lang and the car he got in before.
Okay, yeah, and I have more information on the car he got into, because the car he got into was actually two trans individuals who ended up helping him out. I didn't grab the interview, but I will talk a little bit about that after we see the incident itself.
All right, let them go. Let them go. Give it up. No. Y'all just let him leave.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And the next day after this incident happened, I was actually surprised. He jumped into a random car. Every car he was trying to get into was locked or he couldn't get in, and the mob just kept mobbing him. This particular car was open. He just jumped in the back seat. The people were trying to pull him out, that they were attacking the car. The car was damaged. It ended up surprisingly being two trans individuals who actually drove off and probably saved his life. They put a TikTok out the next day. I was watching the interview, and they said they didn't agree with him in any way, shape, or form, but they just decided the best thing to do was to drive off. And even though they probably didn't want to help him, if they would have known who it was, their car was damaged. He should thank them, and he should pay to fix their car. That's the least he can do. Even though they don't necessarily like him, they did save his life.
Yeah,
so
they
good.
might like him a bit more if he paid for the repairs and actually does something nice for them.
Good on those two individuals for actually driving off and potentially stopping any violence that would have ensued even further.
But let's continue down this road. And from Mariupol, activist confesses to obstructing ICE. No surprise there. A woman in Minneapolis Rapid Response Group openly bragged that they impeded an ICE operation when we got the call. Within minutes, we had 20 to 30 observers who are just there to interrupt whatever law enforcement is trying to happen.
It's January 17th, and I'm coming out of Minneapolis right now with two small wins today. One, Jacob Lang, the leader of this like little pro-ICE rally in downtown Minneapolis, didn't go so well for him today. Small numbers, they kept getting cornered in downtown, and then a very friendly Minnesotan gave him a nice super soaking, drenching him head to toe in water, including his little cotton gloves and cotton hat. For reference, it's 13 degrees here in Minneapolis today. He got so cold, he began asking Minnesotans for help, which of course they did not give him. Last I heard, the Minneapolis Police Department was pursuing him in his red Ford Dart somewhere in South Minneapolis. This leads me to my next small win. Today in South Minneapolis at the Arco gas station on Lake Street, a convoy of 4 vehicles filled with ICE agents pulled up on a man pumping gas and arrested him, threw him in the back of one of their vehicles to abduct him when we got the call for this ICE sighting. Within minutes, we had 20 to 30 observers on foot and in vehicle, myself included. I posted a video on my page where we showed up and we overwhelmed these ICE agents so much they let this detainee go. Now, my video does not include this detainee's face or his vehicle as a means to protect him further, but it's working, you guys. It's working. And I know that dozens of arrests are happening in the metro area every day, but dozens more would be happening if it wasn't for the organized way that my community is showing up to stop these ICE agents. And we're scaring them. They are scaring us, but we are scaring them right back. We have to keep going. It is working.
Okay, and I want to say this, it's not working because she's posting this. Other individuals are posting actual videos of incidents like this happening. They're outwardly fighting with officers and not obeying the law in any way, shape, or form. There's ways you can peacefully protest, and this isn't it. They might think they won the battle on the ground by getting one individual let go, but thousands of people are watching this, picking up on this, and it's really creating I would say disdain against the general American public, especially the moderates.
And once again, it is a white woman who has nothing better to do. And this is what happens when you don't encourage young women to get married, have children, have some sort of purpose in life, in my opinion, because we continue to see a lot of these videos where they're bragging about interrupting a federal operation or a federal investigation from ICE agents. It is from these white women who clearly have nothing better to do but to baby the minorities that they look at as, in my opinion, inferior, because they always need to go be their savior and to go help them.
Well, and I'll say this, over the weekend I started watching just the Crucible with Andrew Wilson, but he was covering these protests, and I said, oh my God, these things are getting massively violent. So then I started tuning into people that were on the ground live, and it was just quite a bit of violence. They simmered down on Sunday, but on Saturday, I mean, they were in a parking garage hitting a guy over the head with a flagpole. He got in his car. They broke the windows, tried to drag him out. He drove off. I believe he hit somebody on the way out of the parking lot. And that was just one group of protesters. There were dozens of groups of small protests and then bigger protests in the city, all seem to either be getting violent or putting up a massive resistance against law enforcement by really pushing back, throwing water bottles. Water bottles in that weather freeze and they turn to ice. They can really, really hurt.
Mm-hmm. And initially we saw like the lefty white crazies that were just yelling and shouting. And as the days and weeks have moved by, we've continued to see different people show up. And it is now looking a lot, in my opinion, as the summer of love back in 2020 after George Floyd.
Yeah.
And also they're inviting and they're letting a lot of this violence continue to happen because it benefits them. But I think one of them will eventually sadly get hurt. We already saw Renee Good when she was trying to do. I think it's going to get worse on their own side.
And I don't think things are as cut as dry as Natalia. They may very well be. That being said, it benefits both sides by having these things get violent. Are these violent protesters paid by the left, or are they possibly even paid by the right? I mean, the right has the most to benefit here by bringing in a digital ID, by stripping freedoms, by spreading this out from state to state, and having the moderates really start to support them because they're showing a lot of violent incidents on TV. Both sides have something to benefit here. The question is, who is this really being organized? The big thing to take away from this is, again, and I'm going to repeat it over and over and over, as soon as either the federal government or state government starts to try to strip freedoms or bring in a digital ID, there needs to be pushback from both the left and the right.
And I do think, and there has been some evidence, at least discovered by Andy No and other independent journalists, that these are being financed at least partially by groups associated or affiliated or receiving funds from the Open Society Foundation and the usual players and suspects that finance this kind of destabilization of the citizenry, of people, of the government, and that continue the schism between left and right. But I also would not be surprised, and we've seen Jake Lang there, if it was also, and it is also beneficial to the right, especially if now they do want to continue down a path of digital ID and of further control in that sense, which I don't think they fully are. And again, conservatism is supposed to not be about that, but we have seen a lot of wishy-washy proposals lately.
Yeah, I will definitely say they're not winning over the American public with the amount of violence the protesters are using. Peaceful protests will win over the mainstream public. We've seen this in Canada. That's how we started our original channel. We went to the Freedom Convoy on the border when the government was overstepping its bounds in the jibby jab era. And we really had the world on our side at that point. And the government started to really feel the pushback. They had to go so far as to overstep their bounds and start canceling people's bank accounts. I mean, when word gets out and you have a peaceful, well-organized protest, you can really sway the general public. But when you have violence like this, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think these protests, especially in this cold weather, are going to outlast law enforcement in any way, shape, or form. And I don't really think they're going to spread. I know the No Kings protest, they were doing multiple cities at the same time because they wanted to spread like a forest fire across the nation. That's not what's happening here. I think this thing is going to eventually peter out. It might go another week or two at most.
And we have seen, and I do want to read a comment specifically because it has to do with this topic specifically, and it is the first one. We have seen, for example, Tim Pool bring up once again the whole Civil War issue that might or might not happen in the U.S. Is it happening already? Is there comparisons to when the actual Civil War started and what happened beforehand? But from Norberto Molina asks, hello, by the way, is there a civil war closer than ever? A lot of Mexican influencers are talking about it. I don't think a civil war may happen because of these Minnesota riots, but what do you think?
I don't really think so, especially because Trump went after a lot of the funding, whether it was U.S.A. or any number of organizations that they would funnel money from three-letter agencies to protesters to fund things like this. I don't think they have big coffers of money like they used to. So I think they have to be very strategic where they place their money. They're seeing this protest. I think they're placing everything they have into this, because if this doesn't work, they're not going to have another chance.
But I do think the division that is happening and also the fracturing that is happening on both sides, both the Democrats and the Republicans are having these internal fights about where to take the party next and what's going to happen next. And if those factions continue to go either to the extremes or more to the center, then it creates more discontent and I think more division amongst the citizens, which maybe could, if there was one incident that could spark it to get it to go even further, maybe in a different state, maybe in Los Angeles, maybe somewhere else where there's a heavy ICE presence, then, I mean, I'm not saying full out civil war, but I am saying maybe a summer of love type.
Well, this is the big problem you're having. The Democrats are as unpopular as ever. Woke is starting to actually recede. They're not getting as much on the ground support. A lot of that was paid support before, and that paid support just isn't there like it used to be. And on the Republican side, I mean, yeah, Trump is still popular with people like me and other Republicans, but a big portion of his base is kind of leaving him. So you're having two sides that their only supporters are really their core bases right now. So it's really hard to foment a civil war.
Oh, a civil war.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard to foment unity right now.
You're not going to foment unity in the United States with a left and a right dynamic in politics.
No, but we've been looking at a lot of examples. For example, when JFK was shot, and then the reaction of the public and even the surgeons saying, I might not be a Republican, but tonight we're all Republicans. Like that kind of unity we haven't seen in a long time, be it because of the importing of millions and millions of people that also don't want to assimilate or aren't asked to assimilate because of the escalating rhetoric, social media, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need unity. I think the question is about civil war, and civil war is not necessarily about unity. But I just don't think people are going to show up. They're kind of disengaging right now.
Maybe. I mean, maybe.
And I don't really, well, I mean, we'll see what happens with the midterms, but
we do continue to see fraud elsewhere and all over the place. From Marian Alfwell, Brooklyn daycare scammers.
One moment, and I'm kind of tying this in. Everything's tied into Minnesota in the U.S. section today, at least. And this fraud daycare scam is happening all over the country. It's being uncovered in California, now in Brooklyn, but it's still being uncovered in Minnesota as well.
And once they have a playbook, usually there's more than one sector that follows it. But from our Alfwell quote, Brooklyn daycare scammers plead guilty to $68 million in Medicaid fraud. Two women in Brooklyn just admitted to running a $68 million scam billing Medicaid for adult daycare services they never provided, paid kickbacks to patients, laundered the money through shell companies. This is the same playbook as Minneapolis, fake care centers billing taxpayers for phantom services. The program they hit is CDPAP, where people with minimal healthcare experience get paid by Medicaid to care for relatives. Hundreds of middlemen firms act as payroll agents with almost zero oversight.
Okay, and one of the big reasons I put this in is because they actually admitted to this. And in admitting to this, they're going to cooperate with police and probably give them a breakdown exactly how this scam worked. It's a lot harder in Minnesota because this is a close-knit Somali community. So a lot, they're all going to be watching each other. Nobody's going to want to cooperate with the cops. So it's absolutely crucial a case like this happened. They admitted to it, and now they're most likely cooperating with police, and they're going to understand as they uncover more and more of these cases and they understand the internal workings, it's going to be easier and easier to look into the logistics of these things.
And it says it's basically a government ATM if you know how to game it, and it does sound pretty easy to game, honestly. They're forking over $1 million, facing 10 years maximum. That's 68 million stolen, 1 million returned, and math works if you don't get caught.
Yeah, and this was only $1 million. We're talking about billions of dollars, especially in Minneapolis. Okay, let's go into the next story. We had quite a few within this U.S. section, but I wanted to show that Trump and ICE are getting pushback from blue states. So they're trying to implement laws or take out old laws that they don't like.
From Greg Price, Abigail Spanberger's first act as governor of Virginia is to repeal Glenn Youngkin's executive order that mandated state and local law enforcement cooperate with immigration enforcement. Elections have consequences, and this is part of the reason why we continue to see this harassment of ICE agents, because they're not having the help and the support of the local police departments.
Well, I will say one thing, although I am a supporter of ICE and what is kind of going on with that, I think illegal immigrants broke the law when they came into the country. I will say there has been a huge recruitment effort with big bonuses handed out to ICE agents, very little training, and them being thrown onto the street. You have to be very careful because everybody has a video camera, and the big war that's going on is on social media. As these ICE agents, if they do overstep their boundary or say certain things, it could inflame tensions in the public eye. So I hope they're getting proper training.
And this executive order rescinds executive order number 47. State and local law enforcement should not be required to divert their limited resources to enforce federal civil immigration laws. It is a responsibility of federal law enforcement. Virginia state and local law enforcement officers must be able to focus on their core responsibilities, investigating crime and community policing. And this
Okay, and that's not the only way they're pushing back. There's another state, I'm not sure if I put it in today's articles, we'll see as we go through, but there's another state pushing back by closing criminal records, meaning if you have any criminal convictions in that state, they're going to close those records so nobody will be able to access those records, whether it's because you're applying for a job or any number of other things. I would be really concerned about people that have done despicable things to minors. I mean, those people's addresses should be out there. They should be put on a list. In most states, they are. I hope closing their records doesn't affect that. It's important if you live next to a PDF file, you know that they're there.
And this is essentially just becoming a sanctuary state once again, and one more sanctuary state. And I do think a lot of the reasons why we are seeing this extra, I will say, enforcement or more forceful enforcement by ICE officers when they're doing these operations and investigations and raids is because they're not getting the support. And we have seen a few police chiefs come out and say, well, you're seeing this on the ground because we're not allowed to cooperate with them and share files with them and actually help them. So it doesn't have to escalate to that point, because in a lot of cases, the people that they're going after have already either been arrested, have records, or have been visited, let's say, by police, if not actually jailed. So if there was more cooperation between the federal officers from ICE and local police departments, then it wouldn't look and it wouldn't be as awful and terrible when ICE operations actually take place, because they're doing it in conjunction with a police department that already knows most of the individuals that they're looking for anyway.
Yeah, you got to be careful when there's not cooperations between state and federal enforcement. Federal powers are going to want to increase those powers, meaning they're going to want the right to stop and ask for identification. In a lot of states, that's not legal against American citizens. That's a crucial freedom. The right to remain silent. I mean, there's a lot of different rights that can be stripped here. They're going to want to bring in a digital ID. I'm sure I would be surprised if they didn't. I mean, there needs to be pushback on those things because Trump's in power now, but a Democrat could very easily win the next election. And you don't want to have reduced freedoms when after the next election. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go.
And this story that I don't know how it fully links to what we were talking about, but from George, quote, the U.S. Geological Survey apparently just discovered an additional 1.6 billion barrels of commercially viable untapped oil in Texas, including over 28 trillion cubic feet of natural gas.
Yeah, this is going to be absolutely huge. I just added it in because it was in the U.S. section, and this is big. They have the Venezuelan oil coming in now, and now they have massive source of natural gas of other different kinds of oil. Mainly a lot of this oil and natural gas would be the kind that's shipped to Europe. The type of oil that's in Venezuela will actually be used and refined in the US. So I would expect gas prices to come way, way down, especially just before the midterms.
Tonight on News West 9 at 6, a new federal report is shining a spotlight on what's still hiding deep beneath the Permian Basin. And it's a lot more oil and gas than previously thought. But just how big is this discovery, and what does it really mean for West Texas? News West 9's Stephen Pepper went to find out.
If you thought the Permian Basin couldn't get any richer in oil and gas, think again. A recent U.S. geological survey has discovered technically 28.3 trillion cubic feet of gas, as well as 1.6 billion barrels of oil right here in the basin. They claim that's enough to supply the nation 10 months worth of gas and 10 weeks of oil.
It's obviously important news. It's a reminder of just how valuable this area is, that we don't just have one formation that we produce resources from out here, but a number of formations.
The survey says these resources are deep, up to 20,000 feet below the surface in the Woodford and Barnett shales. And thanks to advances in drilling and fracking, energy companies can now reach formations that used to be out of range. But Stephen Robertson with the Permian Basin Petroleum Association says just because you can get it doesn't always mean it's profitable.
But there's more pressures. There's more unknowns maybe about that formation that you might encounter, and that does raise cost. So when costs go up and the price point is more like where it is right now in the mid to low 50s, you might not be able to economically justify producing that resource.
So what does this mean for folks here in the basin? Well, Robertson says don't expect a major shakeup. This discovery isn't going to suddenly flood the market or send gas prices plummeting. Instead, he calls it one more asset for energy producers to take advantage of.
You're talking about being able to produce everything we're producing right now from just 2 formations for the next 40 weeks, which is an incredible number. The reality is...
You can leave it there. And because that they have multiple ways oil is coming in right now, eventually it's going to start flowing in from Venezuela. They can slowly start exploring what's happening in Texas. Trump has now opened up Alaska. I mean, if it was just one of these sources oil was coming in on, yeah, gas prices wouldn't fall that much. But because there's so many major sectors of the nation that oil is coming in with and new exploration happening and the deregulation, gas prices are going to come way down, especially before the midterms. I mean, they've already come down in most sectors in the U.S. except for California because they're shutting down the refinement plants.
But at least it's good to, I guess, know that in Texas and in the States, they are still looking and digging and finding more oil and more resources. And it just makes me think of Canada, where they're doing the exact opposite and they're sitting on a wealth mine of things that they could exploit and actually export and produce and do commerce with, but they decide not to. And we're going to talk about Mark Carney, who just arrived at Davos today.
Yeah, I think we just did a video on Mark Carney, actually.
That's the video for today. So go watch that after. Because again, they're not videos or segments from the lives. They're actually original videos, so to speak. So go watch those, please, because they don't have any.
We have a pretty big U.S. section. Do you want to read some of the comments before we go on?
Sure.
Okay.
Trent Briggs, hello Trent Briggs, says Candace was a little better tonight. You had some comments on Candace, and now the lawsuits are coming.
No, yeah, I was watching Candace earlier. I watched the first 20 minutes and then I skipped through to different sections to see if there's any major talking points. Because I was on her side for so long and I went down all those rabbit holes, I am willing to give her a chance to see if anything does come up. I didn't think it was any better. I thought she looked a little worn out. Her makeup looked different today. I didn't know if she was more tired. But I watched the beginning. She's falling down rabbit holes from people that are emailing her that sounds somewhat crazy.
Like always.
Well, that being said, I didn't feel like there was anything there. Yeah, I understand they're having the lawsuit against Wolves in Finance. That being said, they let it slide for a long, long time. They let all these investigations kind of go on. And I think that they're just going to start filing lawsuits.
Well, I think they were waiting to have enough weight where they could actually go after and have all the evidence they need to essentially win or get a payout.
Well, I think they give people a chance to go down these rabbit holes. And now they're not necessarily suing them. They gave them a cease and desist letter.
Which is the first step before a lawsuit.
But it's nice to have a cease and desist letter before a lawsuit and not just go straight into a lawsuit.
But it was different enough. She looked different enough that you came running in while I was getting ready and said, Candace looks weird tonight. It's like she has bags under her eyes or something. And then I looked at her and it looks like she's been either crying or tired or different medication. I don't know.
It wasn't that she had bags on. I thought she probably had bags under her eyes and she tried to cover it up with a different kind of makeup or something because it looked weird around her eyes. She looked somewhat tired. She looked different and her energy was different than usual, I thought. But I continue to watch her when she has her shows, but I usually watch the first 15, 20 minutes and then I'll fast forward through to see each talking point because it's just a lot and there doesn't seem to be much there.
And Trent also says Don Lemon needs to be arrested. We are talking about that in our religion section because it seemed most appropriate over there. Trent Briggs also says the stunt in the church goes too far. Yes, it definitely does. And it goes to prove the institutions that they want to get rid of as well.
Well, yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about Pope Leo and what's going on with the Catholic Church in Germany. It's a little bit crazy what has been going on, not just with Pope Leo, but the Pope before him. There's a schism ready to happen in Germany. I mean, they are going full woke with the Catholic Church in Germany specifically.
And Trent also says about the crazy women and the crazy left. Yeah, they're literally fighting for Somalis who committed mass fraud. Exactly. Or even worse crimes. Like a lot of these people are like, oh, they attempted to arrest him at a gas pump, I think she was talking about. You don't know what they were arresting him for. Like maybe he did disgusting things to children, minors, like maybe he robbed people, maybe he ended people's lives. Like you don't know, and you're still there wanting to defend a person you don't even know.
We're winning. We overwhelmed them. We brought 30 protesters out there. They had to let the guy go. That doesn't mean you're winning. That means you're losing. The American public sees that. They see you bragging about that. They see the video, and it turns support against your cause.
And that means you're also probably under investigation yourself now, too.
It's not the way to have a protest. Again, I'll state the truckers' protest in Canada really set the standard for what a good peaceful protest looks like, and it really did make a change and make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Trent also says about them finding oil. I guess EV cars are a thing of the past. Not in Canada. Now they're importing all the Chinese cars, even though, what's the bad guys? Doug Ford is now saying that Chinese cars are spying on you, and that's why they use dumb phones when they get into any Chinese cars over in China.
Yeah, but I will say this about the oil, and I had always said this was the way to go. I didn't know why they went into wind, solar, and all this other crap. It was good if you were going to get into a war because it could keep electricity flowing to individuals if the electrical grid kind of came off. But as a major strategy, you need to have massive amounts of oil, massive amounts of natural gas that you can run the country off of as you transition into nuclear. And Trump is trying to go into nuclear, but in order to go into nuclear, you're not going to successfully pull off that transition with wind and solar. You're going to need massive amounts of oil and gas to compete on the world stage. And that's exactly what he's doing. I mean, people can talk bad about oil and gas all they want, but the fact that he's using it to transition into nuclear, I think is fantastic.
And Nan says, howdy y'all, hello, how are you? And also says,
oh, what are you cooking today?
Says, can't stay, MLK was unalived for his Poor People's campaign. My wife had the day off. She made a roast beef with veggies. Oh, nice. So
oh, that's
you didn't
great.
Get to cook.
I love roast beef.
Well, enjoy your time with your wife, and we'll see you here soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then I'll read the RUMBLE comments. We're also streaming live on RUMBLE. If your comments get censored for some reason, you can always go there, and we'll read your comments over there as well. They don't show up on the screen still. No, I don't know how to connect it. Ethel, hello, Ethel. Ethel says, don't worry, you guys. Trump is sending 1,500 cold-hearted Alaska ISIS. They'll sub-zero the thugs. Also, did you know that Scandinavian hell is not a burning hell, but an icy hell? Bring the Vikings in.
Well, there's been all kinds of memes about Trump looking like a Viking because of the Greenland situation, but it's looking more and more like I have two theories on this. I think we'll get into a little later, but he wants to get out of NATO and he wants to have them push him out. That was actually your original theory. And a lot of commentators are saying that's actually what he's trying to do now.
We'll go back a few weeks and hear me say it.
Yeah, I kind of think, or I think that other possibility is he wants out of the Russia-Ukraine war. He's going to tell Europe, we're no longer going to fund the war. We're no longer going to support it. We're pulling out. But if you want to continue it, you can fund it yourself. We'll buy Greenland off you for $500 billion. That will fund the war for the next 3 years until Trump's out of office. So either way, I think he possibly gets Greenland.
Ethel also says, the summer of love will be revenged by the winter of hell, and hell yeah.
Well, yeah, I really just don't see these protesters in Minneapolis outlasting federal law enforcement. They're there for the long haul. I don't think the protesters are.
And I don't have nothing else to do.
Well, if the public support was on their side and it was kind of spreading to other cities, it would last. But I think it's kind of petering out already.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I think what's encouraging them and will continue to at least encourage the craziest factions is the righteous virtue that they feel by babying minorities.
Well, the Trump administration is continuing to go after illegal immigrants and continuing to investigate the fraud in Minneapolis despite the protest. And they're actually videoing when they're deporting people onto the planes. They want these protesters to know they're not making a difference. It's really who's going to give out first?
Yeah. Speaking of deporting, from Mariana Fall too, and I did see this video. I wanted to grab it as well, but you grabbed it. It says, wait, 56 people died under ICE during Obamacare administration. Was I living under a rock? 'Cause I don't recall any riots over that back then.
It's wild how short people's memories are. Under Obama administration, 56 people died under ICE custody. 56! And that's not a conspiracy. That's public record. According to the ACLU, under Obama, under ICE, failures of medical care, ICE malpractice. The list is long as to why and how these deaths occurred. And somehow, no mass riots. Obama deported over 3 million people. Let's not forget that, people. I say that in so many of my videos. Millions! And a lot of them were fast removals. No real hearing, no judge, no full due process. And here's the part liberals don't like to bring up. Tom Homan? Yeah, that Tom Homan, he was running enforcement under Obama. And during that time, he was given an award back in 2015 for his work with ICE. Even Democratic states allowed ICE to do their job under Obama. Here's my thing. If you're going to be mad, be consistently mad. Liberals were not mad when ICE was doing their job. All 8 years with Obama, they weren't mad in the streets. Now, I'm not saying that deaths don't matter. They always do. I'm saying the outrage only appears when it's politically convenient, aka selective outrage.
Okay, and a lot of people wonder, why is the Black community speaking up? And this is actually very common. The Black community is most affected by illegal immigration. It affects their wages. It affects their community because it takes resources away from their community. Especially when I was looking into Chicago, I remember it kept coming up at city council meetings. The Black community was absolutely infuriated because a lot of the illegal immigrants were being flown in and then being put into their community and really taking a lot of the public housing that was supposed to be allocated for them.
And it's also because with the whole TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, that the left, most of it at least, is suffering from, they continue to try different things. It was Russia, it was this, it was that, misogyny, blah, blah, blah. And this is just the next thing on their list. And does it have real consequences and affect people's lives that aren't even involved? Of course it does. But knowing that there's those examples already out there and that the numbers are out there and that what happened during Obama is out there, let's not be surprised about the hiding of facts and the using very selective information to continue the outrage and the TDS, because that is what makes them feel good and better and righteous.
Later this week, we actually have a video about TDS coming out. That's Trump derangement syndrome. And we actually quote not only the statistics that she just had there, but the deportations under Clinton and under George Bush. And it was far, far more than Trump's done. Trump's most successful part of his deportation program isn't actually ICE. It's the self-deportation, where he offers $1,000 to any illegal migrants or legal migrants that want to go to the airport. And they'll also get a plane ticket anywhere they want in the world, whether it's their home country or a country like Canada that will accept them. So, okay,
Speaking of Clinton,
this next story is kind of related to the last one, I would say, because it mirrors how former presidents have treated the same situation.
From Mariana Fall, Bill Clinton in 1995, whether they're guilty or innocent of crimes, they're still here illegally and should be sent out of the country.
Criminal and other deportable aliens deported since 1993. Every day, illegal aliens show up in court who are charged. Some are guilty and surely some are innocent. Some go to jail and some don't. But they're all illegal aliens. And whether they're innocent or guilty of the crimes they're charged with in court, they're still here illegally, and they should be sent out of the country.
So that is the key phrase there. Whether they are guilty or innocent of the crimes they are charged with in court, they're still here illegally, and they should be sent out of the country. That was a Democratic president, and that was 31 years ago. What has changed with the Democratic Party?
Even Bill Clinton gets it. Even Bill Clinton understands the importance of borders. He understands the importance of the rule of law. John, these illegal aliens, whether they're criminal illegal aliens or any illegal alien, just as Bill Clinton knows, that's not a victimless crime. Illegal aliens that come across and utilize our hospital services, they fill our jails and schools, that has an effect on our society. That is why we have the Immigration and Nationality Act, immigration laws, and a border.
All right.
Okay, and
every single other country also has a border.
Yeah, and that clip they were using there, we're actually going to get into that in our religion section. That was when Don Lemon went into the church with other protesters. We have 2 clips for that. That was absolutely unbelievable what happened there. I will say the gentleman that was being interviewed there is some video of him that is kind of coming out, and it doesn't look so good. Like I said, a lot of these ICE agents are being recruited on the spot with large bonuses, not be given enough training. They're going to be on camera constantly. Their behavior needs to be top notch so they can keep the general public on the side of law enforcement.
Well, that's Bovino, that's the general or head of at least part of ICE operations, and we have seen him on the ground in Minneapolis.
Yeah, basically people are recording him and some of his agents, and they're trying to run into them and then using his excuse for arrest. And they do actually arrest one person when he wasn't in their way, and they grab him. So if they are, I'm fine with them arresting people. They just need to be aware of how it's going to look when people are filming it.
But also going back to, it's not being done with due process and Trump is doing it differently, because these are some of the excuses that come up when you point out Bill Clinton or more deportations under Bush, Obama, all of them than Trump ever has done. Even Trump's base is upset that he hasn't deported more people. That's part of the talking points from the right, that he's not doing enough of a good job. But the whole due process thing, and I think the best person, and you always criticize me for quoting him and talking about him so much, but was Tim Pool explaining that due process there's not a set of steps that due process follows. Due process only means that you went under what is legislated or what is under the law, which can be very different from crimes, from different types of deportations, et cetera, et cetera. The due process might just be go get him out of the country. That is the due process. But when people keep complaining about due process, they don't understand that doesn't always legally imply that you're going to go stand up in front of a court and get your deportation orders. Some of them already have them. Some of them have deportation orders because they've overstayed their welcome. So it's different for each case. So when the left cries about due process, it's like they're not even understanding what due process means and what it might look like, because they have this TV show idea in their head.
Okay, I kind of will say that Trump's biggest success has been creating an unwelcoming atmosphere where illegal immigrants will self-deport, whether that's through the program he's created or just kind of go on their own. Because the number of people ICE has actually deported is relatively low compared to the last 4 presidents. But the number of self-deportations is extremely high, higher than any other president. Okay, let's go into the last couple of stories in the U.S. section before we get into health, MAGA, and education.
MAHA. From Wall Street Apes, quote, "We need massive momentum behind this. Speaker Mike Johnson and House Majority Leader Steve Scalise are pushing to pass the SAVE Act Plus. Here's why that's a huge deal. Mandates in-person presentation. This is about voting. Voters will show documents directly to an election official or office. This would effectively end online voter registration, mail-in registration forms, and voter registration drives."
Yeah, now I want to be very clear, and I put this in because I am fearful of them maybe creating a police state, forcing digital ID onto people, stuff like this. There's multiple forms of ID. You don't need a digital ID to vote. I'm fine if people want to make fake IDs. That it's going to be hard to do that in mass. The regular IDs that people have right now are enough. We just need a mandate that people bring those to the voting booth when they want to vote. Voting corruption is absolutely huge, especially in states that don't require voter ID. But we don't need a digital ID in order to have proof for voting.
Mm-hmm.
Over to the Senate to give them even more incentive to go protect the sanctity of every American's vote. And that is the SAVE Act Plus, a picture ID requirement. Look, you can't even get on an airplane. You can't go to a bar tonight without showing a picture ID. Yet there are people in many states where the states actually have laws saying you can't show ID, which is a recipe for fraud, for stealing your vote if you're voting legally, so that somebody can come behind you illegally in another country and actually vote and steal your vote. Because if somebody's voting illegally, they're stealing your vote if you're following the rules. So SAVE Act Plus picture ID, we're going to bring that too, send that to the Senate. I think a lot of Americans would like that protection, because if they're following the rules, they just want everybody else to. What makes people angry is when you see boxes of ballots showing up 2 weeks after an election, and then next thing you know, lo and behold, a Democrat takes the lead after being behind for 3 weeks after Election Day. And then somebody who voted by mail in the military, they're overseas fighting to defend our freedoms. Their votes that got in legally before the election are being nullified by somebody illegally. It needs to stop. We're going to have a bill to do just that.
Okay, that's good. And I would say that I am only in support of military being the only type of personnel that can actually have mail-in voting. If you're a citizen that lives overseas, I think you should have to fly back if you want to vote. Mail-in voting is completely corrupt. It's corrupted the system. Any country that brings it up, voter fraud goes way up.
To me, as a Mexican, this continues to be insane, the whole debate and the whole fight over voter ID and do you use a government ID, this, that, or we should have no voter ID. In Mexico, we've had voter ID for a very long time. We have actually used to be an independent institution. Now it's not an independent institution because the current regime took over it. But it used to be an independent institute that would count the votes and actually manage and enforce voting to make sure that it was democratic. Of course, it didn't always work. And of course, that's how the current regime got in initially. But we have a separate ID card just for voting. It's called the voter ID card. And why can't they do that in the States?
Well, I will say, and I keep saying it over and over again,
because that way, even if there's somebody that might not have an ID or might not have access to go to a DMV to get it, you just get them to, you start a new program and start giving everybody voter IDs. And that's how you do it.
Yeah, but I would be very concerned about that program because what you're suggesting would be a digital ID program. If they bring in a special ID just for voting, it's going to be a digital ID.
But do it with a card.
The two ways they're going to try to get in digital ID is on the back of illegal immigration and to clean up voter identity fraud, stuff like that. Be very cautious. I mean, I'm all for cleaning up both of those things. I'm not for digital ID. And those are the two main ways they're going to get them in. If Trump wins the midterms, I fully expect there to be a legislation for a digital ID.
But for me, what I'm saying is I still think it's kind of insane that in the US of all places, they don't have any kind of ID actual requirements. Or an institute that maybe overlooks, oversees.
A lot of states do. The problem is there's 6 states that don't, and they're just magically all Democratic states. You don't need a voter ID. And then at 2 in the morning, the voting rolls just absolutely shift. Okay, let's get into what do we got next?
Last story, and we are seeing what's happening. We're looking at what's going on at Davos. They are just getting in there today, but we'll cover and continue covering on Wednesday and Friday. From Marian Alfwell, quote, Trump wants signing ceremony Thursday in Davos for a new board of peace. Trump's trying to launch a new international body to replace the UN in handling global conflicts, and he wants world leaders to show up and sign. Thing is, most of them are confused, annoyed, or both. He's asking for $1 billion from each country to join, wants full control over decisions, and even invited Putin and Lukashenko.
Yeah, I really think he wants out of NATO, and I think that's what a lot of this Greenland stuff has to do with. On top of that, I think Russia, China, and the United States look at each other as adversaries, but they also understand a multipolar world, and they understand that they're the 3 big powers. I don't see Europe as that, and I think Trump wants out of NATO, and he probably wants out of the UN. I would love to see a different kind of UN kind of take shape that actually has more credible international law. A lot of the international that currently exists is either weaponized or contradicts itself.
But do you think even having an organism like that in the more multipolar world that we're seeing would be useful? And the concept of international law, we did a whole video about it. Is it still relevant for the situation that we're living now instead of back in the 50s, 60s, 70s?
Well, when you have a place like Europe that doesn't build their own military, they rely on the U.S. completely, and they think they can kind of bully around the rest of the world, and they have no actual military power. Like, you need the 3 major military powers who manufacture their own weapons and can actually implement rule by force, I guess. But you need them to have some kind of agreement so there's not a nuclear war. I think an international body would need to be led by the United States, Russia, and China, because they're the ones that are actually have the ability to manufacture.
I still don't know if I love the idea of, like, once again, a globalist organization uniting all the countries and being supranational and non-elected officials.
Well, I don't think it's about...
But I don't know what he's suggesting, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's about globalization. I think it's to...
keep everyone at bay?
Keep everybody kind of apart into their regions and into their zones, and to make sure things don't escalate between the 3 major world powers. I think it has a lot less to do with all the other small countries, because the smaller countries should be able to be kept in line by the 3 major powers.
And again, we also saw back in November when the national security strategy came out, it kind of outlines something similar about the different poles and the dominance that each sector might have.
It's kind of crazy how the European Union absolutely just castrated themselves. They had military financing from the United States for decades, and they failed to build their own military. And now they're wondering why they're not having a say on the world stage. It's because they've outsourced their oil and gas to Russia, their manufacturing to China, and their military to the U.S. They can't do anything for themselves. They have dollars, but they can't back those dollars up with anything like gold and silver. Their banks are lacking that right now. They're struggling and frantically trying to look around the world to fulfill a lot of their debts.
But now let's move on to health and MAHA and education, which you added in there.
Health, MAHA, and education.
But the greatest danger of all would be to do nothing.
And there are a few stories here, one ridiculous one that I added because I just couldn't believe it. But let's start with Nicole Shanahan, which is RFK Jr.'s old running mate.
And she's been absolutely fantastic. She's been one of the big secret weapons in MAHA. Behind the scenes, RFK Jr. can trust her. She's been in a great position. She's also, anytime she gives an interview, it's just a wealth of knowledge of what's actually going on behind the scenes. When she first announced that she was RFK was running mate, I didn't know what to think of her. I actually didn't like her. She's earned my trust over time.
From Valerie Ann Smith, quote, Nicole Shanahan exposes the shocking practice in U.S. farming that's banned in Europe, spraying glyphosate on crops right before harvest to dry them out faster. Europe banned this risky desiccation practice years ago because of the heavy chemical residues left in the food.
Yeah, and a lot of people complain about this, and this is why people are intolerant to a lot of grains, or that's the suspicion. A lot of Americans, when they go over to Europe, they say, wow, I actually feel like I'm nourished when I'm eating the breads. So even though Europe does a lot of things wrong, this is one thing they actually did right.
Well, for years now, I've wanted to get my own mill so I can make my own flour, so I can bake my own bread, but he won't let me.
Yeah, but even if you get that mill, all those grains are still
Yeah, but you can get like especially in Mexico, probably specialty organic grains that aren't, touched by disgusting chemicals.
I just spoke to the EPA this morning. There's a big group of people, scientists out there for 10 years now. They've been trying to get them to stop glyphosate spraying in harvest. So, farmers will use glyphosate throughout the crop cycle, but a practice that we do here in the United States that's banned in Europe is pre-harvest desiccation, which is spraying the crops to kill the weeds, to loosen the crops so that they're easier to harvest. But the problem with that is the residues. The glyphosate residues don't have time to dry out and dissipate. So we're eating heavy loads of glyphosate. And we're, chatting with the EPA this morning. I zoomed in. I was virtual, but the rest of the group was there in person. And for 10 years, this group has been telling the EPA about this. And for 10 years, the EPA has failed to act. This is one of the easiest things we could change.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. A lot of things need to change. Who's doing the best in the administration is RFK. And it's because he's surrounded with people like this that can really help carry the load. And he knows exactly where the bodies are buried and how to make the changes.
Metaphorically.
Yeah.
But I do think it is important to continue to highlight MAHA and for people to continue to talk about it, because it is one of the sectors where there's actually a lot of changes happening that people and the general public might not be fully aware or caught up on. For example, the changing of the food pyramid, talking about eating more fruits, vegetables, meats, and dairy. And speaking of dairy, I found this story absolutely insane. It is from Isabel Brown, who I do really like, even though she's now with the Daily Wire.
I'll say one more thing about that. It's not just about Americans should care about MAHA.
Yeah,
the entire globe needs to care about MAHA because it creates a framework that can be replicated in other nations, at least the things that work. Everything they do is not going to work. But that's what I'm seeing the big benefits of a lot of what the Trump administration is doing, whether it's with Doge and creating an AI framework to root out corruption, or it's with MAHA to kind of clean up the health of the country. You can implement that framework in your own countries, whether that's Canada, Mexico, or the EU.
Yes. Something that we might also want to implement. Again, this is from Isabel Brown, and I found it absolutely ridiculous because apparently, speaking of food intolerances, apparently now if you drink milk, you're a white supremacist. From Isabel Brown, leftist activists, and this is recent, this is in the past few days, are angry that Donald Trump is pushing whole milk for kids because the color of milk is white, and that means it's a dog whistle for white supremacy. You can't make this up. The script is getting more and more obvious. And also they say that part of it is milk is white supremacy because apparently white people have a gene that makes you not lactose intolerant, but a lot of people are lactose intolerant regardless of their race.
Well, you came running into the living room today just calling me a racist. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, you drink milk. And then she showed me the clip. She was joking around.
But I mean, it is insane, the levels of the Trump derangement syndrome and of the ignorance and stupidity of these people.
If y'all are wondering why the government is posting about whole milk, this, I guess, is why. Yes, milk has been used by white nationalists as a symbol of perceived racial superiority. You can't make this up. Functioning as a dog whistle within their movement. Tell me that these people aren't getting paid.
This is a post from the Department of Agriculture, U.S.A, and this is also a white supremacist dog whistle. And there's going to be a bunch of people who are already collectively rolling their eyes and saying, what are you talking about? This is a dog whistle, and so is this. This was posted by the White House. Yes, they're doing this whole milk campaign because Obama took whole milk out of schools, and that's the angle they're playing. It doesn't change the fact that the terrible people think this is about them. And the whole white supremacist thinking that somehow milk is like a white superiority thing is insane.
This is not about milk, people. This was taken directly from the USDA Twitter account today. I don't care what you say. It's not about milk, especially when this was posted from the U.S. Department of Labor Twitter the other day. One homeland, one people, one heritage. Put the two and two together, people.
What does this ad from the U.S. Department of Agriculture remind you of? Drink whole milk. The milk mustache is back. And it's in black.
Seems like that guy needs to drink some whole milk and eat some meat.
I remember
less soy.
I remember growing up, and there was huge liberal campaigns about got milk, drink milk. This was always been a government campaign. This is just the latest iteration, but because they have TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, they're making this into something that it's not.
Black and white. If it wasn't in black and white, it would be one thing. But this is very concerning to me. And I'm not sure if this is a dog whistle or it's just a coincidence, but I mean, that's sort of what a dog whistle is, right?
This is a dog whistle. I'm not going to argue with you about it. I'm just going to tell you the history of how it came to be. Back in 2017, a group of white supremacists who would go on to host the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally came up with this idea that the fact that Caucasian people have an easier time processing lactose than African people meant that white people were superior.
So the Trump administration has just posted this image. It says the milk mustache is back, drink whole milk. And this is not just about milk. This is an extreme dog whistle. Food is a principal tool in colonization. And when the colonizers came to America and started, colonizing, they forced dairy products upon the indigenous people because they claimed it would make them more civilized. Despite the indigenous people not being able to digest it, they called it poisonous, in particular the Mojave people who were on a primarily plant-based diet. The U.S. government called them willfully ignorant and hopelessly lazy because they wouldn't feed dairy to their children. From the U.S. government standpoint, drinking dairy was a part of the superior diet, and drinking it would help.
And
that's exactly what's
I don't think Trump's dog whistling on anything. He just says it how it is. When he thinks something, he says it. There's no dog whistling. There's no speaking in code. I mean, that's absolutely insane. Every president has done milk ads.
Well, and Michelle Obama took it out of schools because she was worried about the obesity crisis, which then got worse because then kids started drinking sodas at school and it became a whole thing. I will agree and accept that milk that is commercially available, a lot of it does have a lot of additives or antibiotics, etc. So checking where you're getting your milk from, trying to be non-antibiotic. So there is an issue still with that.
And I will say they do really push this government milk because I do really like raw milk, but there is campaigns, whether it's the Canadian government or the American government, there is a war on raw milk. I think raw milk is far healthier for you.
In your opinion, without medical...
Yeah. I used to buy it here. I liked it, but it is really hard to get, and you have to drive pretty far to get it.
You made me drive to 2 different states to go get it. Yes, I know. But I was going to say...
and then in Canada, there's such a war on raw milk. If you want to get raw milk, you have to go into a cow sharing program.
You want me to buy half a cow.
You have to buy part of the cow. That way you're entitled legally to take the milk from it because you can't sell actual raw milk, which is crazy.
But I was going to say with the whole... part of why the whole Got Milk campaign got started was because the dairy farmers group or syndicate or whatever it's called had an overproduction of milk and of cheese. And so the government did start implementing all of this into schools because they needed to get rid of the oversupply of it, especially after wars ended and after there was a surge in demand, but then it died down. So that's why the whole Got Milk campaigns did get started and why milk was given a lot at schools. Not that milk is good or bad, depends on who you ask and what you think, but it's also because of that. It's not because it's a dog whistle and then now everybody has to go screaming around. But let's move on to education now. From Marian Afwal, and this is the same Irish teacher we have already spoken about. Interestingly, Marian Afwal says, quote, Irish teacher arrested again after refusing to use they pronoun for student.
Well, this is actually surprising because he keeps getting let out of jail and he keeps going back to work. I don't understand why, like, I don't want to see him get fired in any way, shape, or form because I like what he's doing. That being said, it's surprising that he's allowed back in.
They're letting him back in to do exactly the same thing. Back in cuffs again, Enoch Burke, the Irish teacher who's already spent 560 days in jail, was arrested again this morning outside Wilson's Hospital School. Why? He wouldn't call a male student they, as demanded by the school principal. It doesn't even say by the student, by the school principal. Says this is all about transgender ideology, forcing it upon every school in the country. They want silence, not debate, but my conscience will bring me back to this gate. I was never told to renounce my Christian beliefs to do this job.
Play some of the clip here. Now the clip repeats, so we'll just show some of it.
That's what he's doing. Use of they pronoun for a young child. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. It's an abuse of power. Absolute insanity. Absolute insanity what's happening here at Wilson's Hospital School. Girl and man and woman.
And those cop cars are nice. If you're thrown in the back, you can just roll down the window, I guess.
Yeah, he rolled down the, I didn't process that
Well,
part.
and then he adjusted in a moment.
I had to process the part where he opens the window.
Transgenderism on them. Nobody accepts this. They don't believe it. People don't want to be told what to believe in. Well, this is all about transgenderism. Yeah, it's about forcing. No, it is about one issue. This is about the issue of the paper called George Brian Cregan knew what would happen. He knew what would happen today. This is insanity. And it's abuse of power. It is abuse of power. You're working with the High Court. It's illegal. People in the country, workplaces, businesses.
Okay, you can leave the rest we had already seen. But yeah, I hope he keeps up the fight. And it's good to see regular citizens that are teachers, nurses, and in working class fields to really stand up and for the media to actually give them some attention. We originally started the channel with the Freedom Convoy that was going on at the border. But shortly after that, one of the big things we did was we teamed up with Billboard Chris in Canada. He's a citizen activist as well.
He's arriving at Davos.
Yeah.
In a few today, I think.
We'll probably show some of his clips throughout the week.
Yeah, because last time he went, it was, I mean, he caused a ruckus. They even pulled up his picture on stage and said there's these kinds of people outside, but we're here to defend the rights of everybody. But with that, I mean, compelled speech continues to be an issue. And all the way back in 17, 16, 10 years ago, when Jordan Peterson initially warned about all of this and everybody called him crazy, well, now we're seeing the aftershocks and what actually happens and the enforcement arm of it and how insane it is. And how insane it is that in Ireland, apparently you can just roll down the window.
Yeah. Thank God there's cell phone cameras and all this stuff can get out to the independent media because a lot of this thing, I think in previous times would have just been swept under the rug and not heard about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if we have any
comments.
Okay.
Hold on. From MUA, same glyphosate issue is happening in Canada. In Canada, fruits and vegetables are weird. Like I hadn't fully noticed when I came to vacation in Mexico and then left, but now that we live here and remembering the type of fruits and vegetables that were available in Canada, it is a marked difference.
Well, I remember there was these viral videos going around where all the fruit and vegetables kind of look like rubber and it would move.
And they bounced
and then
a lot.
I was noticing that was happening with Canadian fruit and vegetables a ton. Since we moved to Mexico, they're completely different here.
And we also try to buy fruits and vegetables at markets and local businesses instead of the supermarket, because a lot of the supermarket stuff is coming. I mean, some of the market stuff too, but a lot of the supermarket stuff does come from the same providers almost that eventually bring it to the U.S. I don't know if they get all the way to Canada, but if you live in Mexico or somewhere where you can buy it at a market, try to buy it at a market.
Yeah.
And
food, I would say this, food prices in Canada are absolutely insane. A lot of people don't know how much it actually costs. If you live in the States, your food is actually cheap compared to Canada. One of the big things when Trump was trying to get rid of a lot of the tariffs on Canada, he was trying to take it down against U.S. farms so they can push their food into Canada. That would have meant major price reductions for Canadian citizens. Now, the GDP, it might not have been good for the GDP of the country, but the GDP of the country doesn't necessarily trickle down to your average citizen always. So if the average citizen could get cheap food prices because of imported food from the States, I think it would be a good thing.
And MUA also says, I believe in Mexico as well. I remember someone said to me not to buy berries from Mexico because they use a ton of chemicals to keep them fresh. I will debunk that a little bit because I do know a little bit about that. In Mexico, the main worry with strawberries, berries, and things that grow on the ground or that are, I don't know what it's called, but when they shoot up from the ground, is that the water is not the cleanest sometimes that they use, and a lot of it might be polluted with animal droppings, I will say. So, and then when they wash them, they don't fully disinfect them. So something you do have to do with berries, especially in Mexico, is to disinfect them. They sell disinfectants at the grocery store, and you just put them in water, put a few drops of iodine in there, and wait a few minutes, and then you can eat them.
Yeah,
but that was the main
yeah, but I
thing.
thought that was weird when I first moved here. I'm like, why am I putting chemicals on my strawberries?
Iodine is not really a chemical.
Yeah, but it seems like it.
But it's not.
Okay.
You can also disinfect water that way. If you've ever gone camping, you know. Well, let's move on to, speaking of Canada. And China's biggest ally, Mark Carney, has arrived at Davos today. Mark Carney says, and it's funny what he writes here, I'm in Davos, Switzerland to secure new trade and investment partners for Canada. Nobody wants to do that, Carney. The only one that said yes was China, because then now they can control you even further.
No, there's
Because
no,
Canada-
there's something going on behind the scenes.
I know, hold on,
I'll
let me
break it
finish
down.
reading. Because Canada has what the world wants. We're an energy superpower and a reliable trading partner with the most educated workforce in the world.
Yeah, and it seems like there's rumors that there are new alliances coming out, and Mark Carney is supposed to be leading a new alliance, not just with Europe, but other countries that want to kind of create this new world order. He just went into China. We showed a video of that the other day. I think it was Friday, but we also made a video of that. That being said, he is the man kind of leading this push for the new world order. He was placed as the Canadian premier without any political experience by the Bilderberg Group. Yeah.
And I mean, surprise, surprise, he was already doing this and doing the ties when he was behind the scenes and when he worked at the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England, when he also was at his Brookfield Asset Management Group. But he's been very involved with government just in the shadows. And now he's one of the first ones, that crew that steps to the forefront.
The Davos meetings happen between the 19th and the 23rd. There's going to be big things coming out of there, especially after Trump gives his speech. They're doing closed door meetings, and it's a lot of the big heavy hitters, not only from Europe, but from the Trump administration. And they're going to iron out some major things that are going to happen. So I expect all this week, there's going to be major news coming out of Davos.
Meanwhile, Mark Carney says that it's the most educated workforce. I'd like to dispute that as well. But a nurse in BC, this is from Sammy 2.0, a nurse in BC exposes what's been going on in the healthcare education sector and industry for years. So let's see what British Columbia Healthcare Exposed says. We used to live there.
In the programs I have taught since early 2020, approximately anywhere between 60 to 90% of students have been international students from India. This demographic pattern has been consistent across multiple cohorts and institutions and is relevant to the concerns outlined below. I am a nurse in BC and have been teaching since early 2020. Over several years, I've observed systemic issues within certain HSA colleges that compromise educational integrity and patient safety in Canada. Many programs prioritize high pass rates due to financial and enrollment pressures. A significant number of students openly state out loud they are only enrolled in the program to meet PR requirements. Colleges are aware of this and, in my experience, provide excessive academic and clinical support to ensure students pass, even when they demonstrate they are not assimilated to Canadian healthcare values or practices. Some students receive funded education, are paid wages up to over $21 an hour while attending school, and have tuition covered through partnerships involving health authorities, including Fraser Health, Vancouver Coastal Health. Workforce shortages appear to be prioritized over competency in Canadian healthcare readiness. Several private colleges, particularly in Surrey, operate as paper mills. I worked at one such institution and left after witnessing unethical practices, including an instructor who was Indian providing exam questions to students who were only Indian and leaving shortly after an investigation by the government. Instructors who maintain strict safety and competency standards are frequently bullied or reported for failing unsafe students. I have personally experienced retaliation for upholding patient safety requirements.
Okay, we can kind of leave it there. And I just wanted to show what's going on with the medical system in Canada. It's socialized medicine in Canada. The system does not work whatsoever. It's extremely, extremely hard. You're very lucky if you get a personal doctor or a family doctor. You usually have to go to an emergency room or a day clinic if you want to be seen at all. I went to school to be a paramedic. It's illegal how much they pay paramedics, or it should be illegal. They had to pass special legislation so they could pay new paramedics for the first 3 years $2 an hour if you don't have a call. What that means is you go to your station, you stay there for a 24-hour shift. If you don't have a call, then you get paid $2 an hour. If you don't have any calls for the night, I mean, you're not going to be able to live on that wage, especially considering a lot of these paramedic stations are hundreds of miles away and in the middle of nowhere. But when it comes to nurses, it's much the same thing. They're repressing wages by bringing massive amounts of immigrants into the country.
But also with those massive amounts of immigrants, they get better, apparently, education and benefits, but also some of them don't get educated at all. And it is because of the failing socialist healthcare system that Canada has, where they just need more people because they're running out of people. They're not educating or giving enough opportunities to actual Canadians, local Canadians. So they're having to go search outward. So it is both a failure of DEI that we're seeing, but also of a socialist healthcare system that doesn't work, and we've seen it proven over and over again. The same thing is happening in the UK. The same thing is happening in Switzerland. Any place that has a socialized healthcare system, there's people actually coming out and now saying, it's not working. I haven't been seen for 6 months. I'm waiting for an appointment that was supposed to happen a year ago. My knee got fixed wrong because I couldn't see an expert and an actual doctor to fix the specific knee issue. Over and over again.
Yeah, and I will also say that it's strange because a lot of Canadians just can't get jobs that are citizens, but a lot of illegal migrants come into the country and they're bumped to the top of the list because of different quotas they want to meet, because migrants' wages are subsidized by 30% by the Canadian government. So many employers want migrants rather than Canadian citizens because it subsidizes their wages and they don't have to pay out of pocket for it.
But we did speak briefly about the truckers convoy that we filmed, and it was helped us start our channel. But from Ryan Gertison, now CBC asked how are sappers why the Canadian Civil Liberties Association challenged the use of the Emergencies Act that Trudeau instilled initially during the trucker convoy protests, and his answer was...
Yeah, and a lot of liberal commentators on the news right now, because this decision just did come back from the court saying it was completely illegal what the government did with the Emergencies Act. They're saying nobody cares about this. Nobody even remembers that this happened. No, people do remember it. We have a show, and I talk about this very, very often, especially when something like this comes up.
Also, Alberta remembers.
Yeah, and Alberta...
Saskatchewan remembers.
We're going to see if they remember come that separatist vote.
Can you just remind us why the Canadian Liberties Association challenged the use of the Emergencies Act by the federal government in court?
Well, because of the awesome power of that piece of legislation. It was the first time the Emergencies Act was put into use. The Emergencies Act can temporarily suspend fundamental freedoms and civil liberties of Canadians. It was appropriate to test it, to provide some assurance that it was used appropriately and according to the legislation that provided those powers. And as it turned out, when that judicial review happened, that the federal court decided that the threshold had not been properly met.
And now the Federal Court of Appeal has agreed with that decision. What's your reaction?
Well, I think this is tremendously important for all Canadians. What this means is that there is now some guidance and some clarity about how those powers to suspend people's civil liberties and fundamental freedoms, how those powers can be used. And it also should provide Canadians some reassurance that those rights and freedoms will not be trampled upon as a result of government overreach.
Okay, and I'll say this. There should be some kind of compensation for the people that got their bank accounts canceled, couldn't pay their mortgages, got their homes taken.
Got their trucks taken.
That should be obvious that there's going to be that compensation coming, especially now that this has been handed down. The big problem is there's no recourse to go after these politicians. It's illegal to go after the politicians. They need to bring in new legislation in Canada. So if they overstep their bounds next time with the Emergencies Act, politicians will have their neck on the line, kind of.
And we do have some comments from RUMBLE, so you won't see them on screen, but I am going to read them and reply to them. Ethel says, Carney is great. He's our secret conservative agent. Look at it this way. When he was with the EU, Brexit happened. Now when he's with Canada, a Brexit, Saskexit, and Quebexit are about to happen. Hopefully, maybe he is secretly wanting to rearrange the powers that be in whatever country he's in. However, we do see that Brexit, while it was a good idea, in practice and implemented, hasn't seen the best results or the results that were even promised to the people when it initially happened. And Ethel also says, but maybe he is a random, weird conservative actual ally.
I'll actually say something about Carney because there's a new investigation. It's supposed to be out in the next couple of days, but the UK and the Crown in the UK own 89% of Canadian-owned assets, supposedly. So I'm going to be interested when this does come out. If that is the case, that shows that Carney was kind of placed there by the UK, and he's going to be loyal to the UK, and that's why there is so much animosity between him and Trump, and he's literally running into China's arms right now.
He literally said that. From Ethel also says BC healthcare program is meant to get rid of the weaker population. In Sparta, they kicked the weakest off the cliff. In BC, they also let natural selection take over, finally make all Canadians Amish. Yeah. Well, we did do, and we are going to release a video soon about the MAID program in Canada, and that's literally what they're trying to do. They're going the Spartan way, I guess.
Well, yeah, and a couple of years ago, there was a lot of different stories that were coming up with the Amish. Now that she kind of mentioned that, we were following Robert Barnes, who's a big constitutional attorney in the United States,
and that has to do with milk, actually, with raw milk too. It all connects.
But he was defending a lot of these Amish communities for free. The government, especially in the United States, really does go after the Amish, especially under the Biden administration. Why they don't like Amish communities is because they grow all their own food. They don't take any kinds of medications or prescriptions. Basically, they give a baseline that you can really compare other populations against. And it's evidence that a lot of medication actually is failing the population. A lot of food is failing the population. They don't want to have that baseline group that is eating natural and living healthy.
And one of the first videos also we did once we got here in Mexico was about the fines and the tickets that the Amish community got in Canada for crossing the border. They had no phone. They had no idea what was going on or that they even had fines. And then they had to fight against them. And
when they were trying to take their homes away from their sons inheriting them, it was, unbelievable.
But yes, maybe let's make everyone Amish. But in the meantime, let's talk about remigration. Maybe let's migrate to Amish country.
The immigration policies in Europe are a disaster. You're destroying Europe. You're destroying the culture of Europe.
And just two stories in this section. The first one, pretty incredible that this information actually is out there, from GB News, and this is in the UK. A U.S. asylum seeker from Las Vegas has been living in the UK hotels and received state support for over a year, despite having his claim rejected. So this is just one example.
But it goes in depth here. There's multiple layers to the story. It's absolutely insane this is happening.
This is a totally bonkers story. It really, really is. A United States asylum seeker has been living in Britain with free accommodation and benefits for more than a year in the first of its kind case. The man is from Las Vegas and he fled to the UK, claiming he was being persecuted because he's black, Jewish, and a member of the Mormon Church. He was put up in a migrant hotel before his claim was rejected last summer. However, he has not been removed from the UK and subsequently was allowed to claim thousands of pounds in accommodation, food and state support. This is nuts. This is totally nuts. And joining me now is the man who's found the story and is bringing it to us here at GB News. It's journalist Mitchell Durdin. Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me. Tell us about this story. This is when I read this today, you sent me the article.
Yeah, this gentleman's going to give another couple layers to this story, which makes it even more outrageous. But I just thought this was something else. I would love to see a conservative reporter kind of try to do this and then report it on it in depth.
I mean, technically, I'm from Mexico. I have a bigger claim for asylum than this guy does.
What's going on?
It is perhaps one of the most bonkers asylum stories I've ever heard. We've had a man from Las Vegas, the United States, our closest ally, from a $500,000 house, a 4-bedroom house in a gated community, flee from Vegas to Gatwick Airport, claim asylum on entry, allowed to stay in, got help from Migrant Help UK, who've paid for a 4-star hotel in the Hampton by Hilton in Croydon. Then the Home Office picks him up. He was in various hotels in West London, the Premier Inn, the Holiday Inn Express. Stayed here for months and months and months. In about July, his application's been refused, as they've said, you're from America, you can't claim asylum, right?
Yes.
They've given him an extra month to leave. He stayed the extra month, and he's decided, oh, no, I quite like it here, I'm going to stay. He goes off to Islington, and the woke Lefty Council in Islington helps him stay here illegally by saying he's a homeless person, giving him social housing and benefits, and just not reporting him to the border force and enabling him to stay all the longer. He's still here today.
It is genuinely one of the most jaw-dropping stories. So this, to me, shows that it's almost like a lottery. If you go to the right council, they'll help you stay here illegally. It is bonkers to me. This should send shockwaves throughout the country, because what this proves is that even our local councils are not working within the parameters of the law. Surely he should have gone straight to border
we
enforcement.
can leave it there. And that truly was a shocking story. And it just shows what's actually going on with a lot of these migrants coming in, getting free benefits, and never wanting to leave. That's part of the point, I think, with a lot of the Trump policies, is cutting off a lot of the benefits to migrants and giving them back to citizens. Citizens should be the ones to benefit from their tax dollars.
But it also continues to show the bigotry of low expectations that the left has of minorities, and that they I don't know if they think minorities are too dumb to scam or to take advantage of things, or to take advantage past what is actually given to them, or overstay, etc. But it just shows that one way or another, the left and the people that are in charge of monitoring these things don't think that other people can scam and other people can take advantage of things, which we have seen repeatedly in Minneapolis, all the way from Minneapolis to Brooklyn, which we just reported on today, to this. And how many more are they?
Okay, let's go into the next story here. And again, it has to do with the remigration, but this gentleman breaks it down pretty good.
From Dr. Malouf, Black American tells it like it is. Muslims are the reason blacks are here in America, according to him.
And he looks like quite the character, I'll say that.
Black people in Africa. It was Muslims are the reason why we blacks are here in America today. Not because of what Christians, white people did to us.
Weren't those slave traders white men from Europe?
No, they were Muslims.
Arab slave
Blacks
traders.
and Muslims. The slave trade was going on long before white people, Christians or Jews even showed up. In fact, from 700 AD, from what I can research, go Google stuff up. 18 million blacks were taken out of Africa into the eastern parts of Arabia and the East, and so forth and so on. 18 million, whereas the whites and Christians bought about 13 million from the black and Muslim slave traders.
Yeah, and pause it for a sec. And I was actually watching some of the Matt Walsh documentary today, and they talk about the slave trade coming to the Americas. Actually, less than 500,000 made it to North America specifically. Most of it came to Brazil and the Caribbeans by the millions. Actually, North America only had 500,000.
Slave trade, but you never hear about that. You never hear that part. All you hear is what whites, Christians, and Jews did. The fault of white Christians and Jews is that they disobeyed the Torah. And for the love of money to make profit, they abandoned what they had forsaken in Europe and took on the curse of Africa by buying slaves. But they did not capture it. In fact, Henry Louis Gates has a new book. And apparently he is saying, something I've been saying, that over 90% of the slave trade in West Africa was black people and Muslims.
Okay, we can leave it there. And a lot of people just don't know that the Muslim slave trade was the major slave trade that really brought it around the world. And that's why the Slavics got the name Slavics, because of the Muslim slave trade.
Yeah, slave comes from the word Slavic.
Okay.
But I will read Ethel's comment from the remigration section. Says the UK story is a great pathway to show your channel, guys. Imagine the exposure you get if you claim that Trump hates Mexicans so much that guy had to escape the U.S. with his wife for asylum in the U.K. I mean, again, I'm Mexican. I could just say, Trump hates me, please let me in, or something like that. Ethel also says, Nat, just before you apply, make sure that guy is wearing a proper Muslim attire and he has a beautiful green-colored Quran in his pocket. I don't think I'd let him do that.
Let's go into the EU there. I don't want to have to pray 5 times a day either.
No, we're going to Latin America quickly because things
you
seem
did have
to
a story.
Yeah, some people here in Mexico seem to think things are heating up. Some others, not so much. And over the weekend, we did see a big hubbub here in Mexico and in the rest of Latin America about, first, an FAA advisory that the Federal Aviation Administration, one of those, sent out saying that there was going to be blocked sections that where planes could not fly over, specifically in Mexico and the Caribbean. And then we saw planes in an airport near Mexico City unloading or loading or doing something. But it was a U.S. military plane, apparently a Hercules, something like that. I don't know nothing about military equipment. A cargo plane. But now, on Monday today, during her morning segment, President Claudia Sheinbaum said that her administration secured written assurances and described the Toluca, which is the airport activity, as a logistical operation with the United States. The plane landed, public servants got on that plane, and they went for training. However, initially, it was reported that the administration and the Mexican administration did not know that the plane was there, and it became this huge thing on social media when people realized. And when asked initially, she had denied that the plane was even there. And then our actual military and security sector had to come out and say, "Oh no, yeah, we were doing it all together. We approved it. We let them come in." So there's two different versions, but clearly there is something happening.
There's one version, and that's the version that I've suspected from the beginning. She's sending massive troops to the border. Trump's sending massive troops to the border. He's building permanent military bases. He's taking cargo airplanes that can bring vehicles. They're now landing in the Mexican airport. There is an operation going on. They are cooperating behind the scenes, but outwardly,
and that's the thing.
Claudia Sheinbaum has to look like she's the one controlling the country, that she has her sovereignty. And I think she's going to keep up that charade until at least 2028. If J.D. Vance or a conservative wins, I think she'll come outwardly in saying that she is cooperating with the military and the U.S., but if a Democrat wins, she's going to reclaim her sovereignty and tell them to get out.
But yes, of course there is cooperation. We have continued to see military activity or suspected U.S. military activity already within Mexico, but the fact that she continues to lie to the citizens, and that now there's more and more censorship laws coming where you can't even report or talk about these kinds of things because you'll get removed. That is the worrying thing, that there's two different versions of Claudia Sheinbaum, one that is the U.S. gets and one that the lie that her citizens get.
I will say something else. I was actually following, I was watching another news show today, and surprisingly, the Canadian dollar is plummeting when you compare it to the Mexican peso, which was surprising. So, Carney's alliance with China, where Mexico seems to be trying to align with the U.S. and continue to get a tariff deal, seems to be benefiting Mexico in a lot of different ways.
And that difference in the Canadian dollar versus the Mexican peso just goes to basically prove the cooperation that is there, but she continues to deny.
Yeah.
But now let's move on to the EU, where things are also heating up. So let's start with Norway's Prime Minister. Hold on. From Brian Allen, it says, quote, confirmed Norway's Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store, I think, acknowledged Trump's letter is real. The letter reportedly ties Norway's Nobel Peace Prize decision to Greenland, questions Denmark's rights of ownership, and declares the world isn't secure unless the U.S. has complete and total control of Greenland.
Why don't you read the letter there?
Okay.
It's short, so.
From the White House, it says.
And man, this is one of those magic tricks Trump is constantly trying to do. He's trying to get these people's TDS to activate by saying crazy things. Look over here. And what he actually wants is something that he's going to pick their pocket with.
It says, Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars, plus I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China, and why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President DJT.
Yeah, he just wants to shake up the chessboard in Davos before he goes into all these meetings, before his negotiating staff goes into all these meetings. I mean, these leaders all have TDS, and this is going to activate every single one of them at this point.
Mm-hmm. And Interestingly, also in Germany, and we have seen how uncomfortable it makes the current ruling party in
This was
Germany.
big news. And I'll give a couple little wrinkles after you read the story here.
From Basel the Great, Alice Weidel announces Germany will leave the EU. When the AfD wins the next election, she intends to give Germans the chance to vote to leave the monstrous EU. This will bring the whole thing crashing down.
Well, and this is fantastic. Everybody knows the EU is trying to go head on to World War III. They want to expand that Russian war. The thing holding it back is Trump. They kind of want to wait him out. That being said, AfD is very popular, and if there was an election today, they would win, but they wouldn't win a supermajority, meaning the other parties that are sharing power with them could actually make a coalition and have more power than them, even if they do win. So I think it's going to take maybe a couple elections. Every single other party in Germany said they will not work with the AfD and they will not cooperate. So just winning the election isn't enough. They really need a supermajority. That being said, if the people of Germany really do start to understand that the EU is trying to broaden out that war and they'll have to send their children to that war, they may vote for AfD en masse. And if they can consolidate enough power, it would be nice to see the people actually get a vote on this. There used to be a lot of benefits for being part of the EU, but as we've seen recently, they're banning a lot of people from even going to different countries inside of the EU with an EU passport if they don't like what you're saying.
Liebe Freunde, jetzt konnte ich mir noch mal die letzte Frage aus Berlin direkt anschauen.
So you can leave it. I had read it earlier, but
okay.
Okay, let's go into the second story here.
Conversely, from the British Patriot, quote, holy S, thousands of young people just flooded the central London streets to reject digital ID completely. They don't want the state monitoring their every move.
Yeah, and this was fantastic to see. Recently, Keir Starmer had to back down on his digital ID, which was a major win. This protest was planned before that. That's why it continued to go on, but it's good to see everybody still came out, and it was nice to see that it was primarily a lot of young people. So these are young voters. Young voters are coveted by parties in power because they're going to vote for a long, long time, especially if they're willing to go out to rallies like this. If they're going to a rally, they'll make it to the polling booth. And pause it for a quick second. I want to actually continue to play it, but notice the kind of people that are there, how they're dressed. They don't have face masks on. All the signs are organic. They're actually painted. They're not passed out. They don't have wrinkles still in them like they were freshly bought or freshly printed. It's because this protest isn't a paid protest.
Well, the ones that say no digital ID are printed, but to be fair.
Okay, and that's
but
pretty
I think
good.
Also, specifically with the young people in the UK and Australia, for example, a lot of this digitalization of ID and of having to show your identity online has been implemented to protect young people. So of course they're feeling, number one, I don't want to have to do that and I don't want to lose access to the apps or whatever I use on the internet. But number two, maybe don't want to be an excuse or the excuse that they use to bring in digital tyranny.
Yeah, too many dots are too close together in the UK. As soon as digital ID is brought in, they already know it's going to be used for online censorship. In the United States, you're not having the same kind of censorship. So if they can make other excuses, they may try to make a run at digital ID even in the United States. Like I said before, they would do it under the guise of illegal immigration and voter ID. So if they do just push back on that, I'm all for voter ID, just not a digital ID. And as far as illegal immigration goes, you don't need digital ID in order to get rid of illegal immigrants.
Yes, Trump is proving that now. Let's move on to France. From the Kobayashi letter, quote, France's President Macron calls for the EU to activate its most potent trade weapon against the U.S. after President Trump's tariff threat over Greenland. Macron is now calling for the use of EU's anti-coercion instrument. If used against the U.S., it would restrict U.S. access to the EU market, potentially blocking U.S. banks from EU procurement and targeting U.S. tech giants. This trade weapon has never been used before.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting kind of what happens here. I mean, if the EU actually wants to push back against the US and maybe run to China's arms, much like Canada did, that is a possibility. I mean, it's like two rams butting heads here. I think the EU is going to lose this one. But that being said, let's just hypothetically say they do go to China. The United States is bringing back a lot of manufacturing right now. They're actually building a lot of these facilities. It's starting to work. You're seeing them break ground on a lot of these manufacturing facilities, but they're going to need places to ship that. The American public alone isn't a big enough market. So Mexico is going to be huge in that if they can actually be successful at bringing this manufacturing back to the U.S., it could potentially be a market in the future, and Brazil as well. And the Brazilian elections are coming up later this year in 2026. It would be very interesting if the U.S. really did focus on the Western Hemisphere and start bringing up countries so they had demographics that they could sell their goods to.
And also, we do continue talking about the reliance and the dependence that the EU has had on the U.S. military and U.S. military weapons and training and etc. because they essentially did it themselves. Like, they got rid of all of their power, their alleged power that they could have. Hold on, I'm trying to get the story.
Oh,
there
okay.
we go. From Leo Kears, former head of MI6, Sir Alex Younger, makes a great point about European military reliance on America infantilizing them. I'd go further. Under America's protection from external threat, they've started self-harming.
Yeah, and America did the European Union a huge favor. It's actually what allowed the European Union to establish itself and gain as much power as it had. They never really had to develop a military. They never met the amount they were supposed to be putting into NATO, and they really did rely on the United States. And now the United States looks like they might want to get out. It could be a big benefit to the European Union actually having to learn to be self-sufficient. Now, there's going to be a lot of hard times if they do that, and they're going to need to make an agreement with Russia so they can get energy again, because all their manufacturing has left at this point.
I think, I'm not so much talking about intelligence, but more broadly, the security relationship with America and Europe, between America and Europe. We have been infantilized, and it hasn't been healthy. And we should be extraordinarily grateful to America for its generosity and its provision of its security guarantee. But we should recognize a bit like a child that gets a trust fund. It's meant that we haven't had, through necessity, to develop a set of really important life skills, the most important of which I would describe as the creation and exercise of hard power. And that is now the problem that Europe's got. I think, I'm not...
Yeah, and I just don't know how they're going to do it. They gave all their manufacturing away to China. They're no longer buying energy off of Russia, and they've outsourced their military manufacturing to the United States. I mean, it is going to be a hell of a time for Europe, whatever direction they go. I know they wanted that Russian war to take the $72 trillion in Russian assets and reset their entire economy and become the great world power again. But I just don't think that's going to happen at this point, especially without U.S. backing.
And we also have seen, we talked about it on Friday, I believe, about the plan that they had initially, which was the metrosexual European, and that was their military strategy, or was involved and swept into its military strategy.
Yeah, we were reading the article on our last episode about metrosexual European military power. And in 2004, this was their entire strategy. I highly recommend going to read that article. Again, it's metrosexual European military power.
And I mean,
it's a hilarious read, but that's what the elites in Europe thought at the time.
And just with that, it goes to explain everything we're seeing now as well with Europe.
Yeah.
And what
And now they're realizing the countries that actually invested in being self-sufficient, meaning they had substantial manufacturing, they could supply their own energy, and they actually could make their own military weaponry. It was very, very important, because you can have dollars, but if those dollars aren't backed by anything, you really have nothing.
Mm-hmm. And Elon Musk also has a plan. From Basil the Great, quote, Elon Musk offers Starlink to UK at cheaper rate than BT. Elon wants Brits to have affordable high-speed internet, and so he's lowered the price to just $35 a month, $5 cheaper than the equivalent package with BT might be needed if the government shuts X down, because they continue to fight.
Yeah, and I think he's taking, I think this is at a loss for him, but I think it's a bigger strategic strategy, meaning they're trying to come after X. If everybody's using Starlink, it's really hard to go after X because there's no internet cable connection through the ocean. They're not able to monitor what's coming through the satellites. So they're not able to shut it down. I also think he has these cell phones ready to go, where if this strategy doesn't work, he may release a cell phone that's direct to satellite connection that can't be censored.
And we are seeing this ongoing fight between Elon Musk, X, and the British government because Keir Starmer got his bikini in a bunch after a bunch of AI pictures of him in a bikini came out. But now they're trying to censor and not allow X to be used in the UK, which is insane. But we've seen this strategy tried already by Brazil and other countries to varying degrees of success.
Okay, let's go into personality politics.
We do have some comments that I will read because they're relevant for the section. Sean, hello, Sean. Sean says, are they waiting out for JD Vance? Then Germany will be in for a big disappointment.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement behind the scenes with U.S. politics, especially on the conservative side. I really hope that J.D. Vance does win. I think Gavin Newsom's going to be a much bigger threat than people give him credit for. I also think they want to leapfrog Marco Rubio into J.D. Vance's spot. I think Marco Rubio would be on board with World War III and escalating things with Russia. He's a classic neocon, and he has expressed interest in broadening out that war. With J.D. Vance has been the main proponent against engaging in the war with Ukraine and Russia.
And also we have comments on RUMBLE, which I will just have to read. On Denmark, Ethel says, I think people are grossly underestimating the fact that in world politics, Trump is the greatest comedian of all times. Instead of the Nobel Prize for Peace, he clearly needs a Nobel Prize for comedy.
Yeah, and I agree, especially with that letter. It's just so obvious they're being trolled, but they're not from a generation where they even understand the concept of trolling. They don't know the word. They don't know what's going on. They're taking it seriously. We have to have security meetings. But behind the scenes, there is becoming a reluctant reliance between Russia, China, and the United States because they're the actual military powers of the world right now. So it commands respect amongst the three. If Europe had an army, they would also command respect, but they don't. They don't have a real substantial army that can manufacture weapons for themselves.
Yeah. And we did see, I mean, I don't know how verified those videos are, so I didn't add them, but we saw the German soldiers arrive in Greenland, and then they left a day after.
Well, Trump threatened tariffs, and then they all left.
Yeah. On digital IDs, Ethel says, I have a feeling about the majority of people protesting digital IDs have no idea why having them is bad. I just do not believe protests nowadays, except for the trucker convoy, the only real one.
Yeah, I think there is a big movement against digital ID as well as digital currency. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop digital currency. In researching it, I guess at this point, the best you can maybe hope for is the most freedom that a digital currency can provide. At this point, CBDCs are completely controlled by the government and can be shut off at any time. They can also say what you're going to buy with it. Stable coins provide a lot more freedom. That's the path Trump's trying to bring the United States on. The reason he wants to offer more freedoms with a stable coin and his digital currency is he wants to undermine the EU and other countries' CBDCs, meaning he wants those countries to adopt the American digital currency. And the only way to do that is to have built-in freedoms into that currency. So it's going to be interesting what does happen there.
But on the whole, I don't know if they know what they're protesting about or when they're protesting digital ID. I think they do understand, at least, especially the young people, the implications of having no anonymity online, but also having the government track everything, having the ability of tracking everywhere you are, everything you do, everything you look at. And I think that's never going to be a winning argument for the government.
Well, I think the government in the EU and the UK would have had a much easier time or the easiest possible path if they did it before they started trying to take away freedom of speech and bring in online censorship. It's becoming very apparent why they want a digital ID, and that people are really pushing back within the EU and the UK against digital ID because of the draconian laws they've been bringing in. They should have thought it out a little bit better if they wanted to try to do this.
And Ethel says, on the European Union, there's no security expected for the European Union. Their population is too comfy and perverted. Imagine a trans army of gays and lesbians. They won't last a single day in a real battlefield.
Well, that's kind of what I was gonna. Oh God, I've lost
Confusion
my train of
tactics. Maybe they could use them as cannon fodder.
It's interesting what the EU did, because the United States provided them with all their security. They had cheap energy from Russia, and they had cheap manufacturing from China. They outsourced everything. They didn't do anything from themselves. They had a lot of extra wealth and currency because they were outsourcing everything. And what did they do? They created massive welfare programs for all their citizens, and now their citizens expect all that stuff. And now that everything is collapsing because they never did anything for themselves, there could be potential massive uprisings within the EU. And there was a question earlier about civil war in the United States. I think there's much more likely to be a civil war within the European Union and the UK.
Let's move on to the section I've been dreading all stream because I really don't want to talk about this, but we have to.
Let's set it up first.
Yes.
Hit the button real quick.
Okay.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And it's personality politics. This one's going to be interesting. I have a theory here, and that's why I've linked all these videos together. And it's a bunch of, I guess you could call them conservative young commentators coming together in the most cringe way, really sinking themselves to the bottom together and all kind of becoming bottom feeders. Now, some of these personalities I have a little bit of respect for, but some of them I have absolutely no respect for. And let's just get into it.
The union of all of them is just showing the worst of each other in each other, from James Lindsay and the anti-communist, and he has been warning about this, like him or not. He says, I am once again telling you they're all part of the same thing. And we'll see what that thing is. Oh, and open source Intel also says this may be the trigger that sends the entire movement into complete collapse. And I agree. I don't know if we can play the music, but let's see. Yeah, I can't. But it's Ye's song about the man with the mustache.
And the series of clips we're going to have here is going to be Nick Fuentes, Sneeko, Clavicle, and Andrew Tate, as well as Tristan Tate. And what you really see here is a couple of these people have good sides of their personality. Now, everybody's going to have a lot of negatives. If they can, you want to shine light on the best possible side of your personality. When these people are together like this, it's really highlighting the worst possible sides of them. And yeah, I don't think this was good overall.
So they're singing that song that Ye has about the man with the mustache. They're trying to tell Andrew to sing the lyrics as well, and he is reluctant. But it is, in my opinion, the worst of the influencers of the retarded right, as I call it.
And Nick was there. He was completely awkward in the club. I mean, his base has a lot of respect for him because of his intellect and the way he thinks and the way he views a lot of things. He claims to be a virgin. He claims a lot of things when it comes to Catholicism. Being in a club doesn't really fit into that branding as much, especially when you watch a lot of the clips that kind of came out of it.
And I will say this does nothing to help dispel the rumors that he might be attracted to certain side of the coin. From Adam says, Justin, quote, Nick Fuentes has received a 7-figure sponsorship from a company that sponsored Mark Levin, famous Daily Wire contributor.
Well, and I gotta say, it's looking more and more like these people are gonna want the Democrats, possibly Gavin Newsom, to win. Clavicle there in the middle has already come straight out and said he's voting for Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is looks maxing. He's a Chad. You should vote for Gavin Newsom. He was actually reconfronted by Tristan Tate on a clip recently, and he restated, you should vote for Gavin Newsom. That's the good choice. I completely disagree with that. He has a major contract as well. We're going to show a clip of that later. All three of these individuals have got major contracts. And I think Sneeko is very left-leaning to begin with. He's Muslim. He lives in New York. I think when the election comes around, he's going to outright support Gavin Newsom. Nick, on the other hand, I don't think he's going to outright support Gavin Newsom, but I think he has the most to gain if Gavin Newsom wins. Meaning, I think he's going to try to say, I'm not going to vote. My supporters shouldn't vote. I don't think he'll endorse a JD Vance or any other conservative because he wants Newsom to win. If Newsom wins and he destroys the moral fabric of the United States and destroys the economy of the United States, it's a perfect setup for a figure like Nick Fuentes to come in and really either run for politics or even maybe run for president. As far-fetched as that seems now, it's not so far-fetched if you have Gavin Newsom win next.
These kids with the suit and the looks maxing, they watched too much American Psycho and want to take it as a perfect example.
They look like
Gavin Newsom is California Psycho.
They look like a bunch of metrosexual
or just homosexual.
The guy in the middle there is talking about, oh, we need to put socks in our shoes so we can be taller. He's already 6'2".
We have that clip too.
He's already 6'2". He's so inconfident. This is not masculinity. I don't think anybody's looking up to these people. Nick was much.
The sad thing is they are. Nick, they have money.
Nick was much better when he was by himself. But I think if he doesn't endorse JD Vance or whoever the conservative candidate is, he can't outright endorse Gavin Newsom, but he needs people that can. And I think that's what these other two people are going to provide for him.
Nick's saying, you're saying, when are you going to take the gold deal? I heard that was a big deal.
I think I'm going to take it, yeah.
I think you should.
What is the deal? Well, it's just like a gold sponsorship. Okay. You know, there people are buying gold, and the reason why I have to take it is because it's Mark Levin's old sponsor.
Oh, okay.
So it's an old Mark Levin gold sponsor, and they said, I don't like Mark Levin anymore. I want to support you. So they're taking his deal and giving it to me. So otherwise, I don't think I would have taken it, but I have to just mod Mark Levin. It's just on account of.
Is it a big deal?
Yeah, it's like a 7-figure deal.
Not bad.
Yeah, so it'll be, I mean, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. You know, we're negotiating it, but it'll be an interesting deal. It'll be the first sponsorship because I only do super chats and merch and subs.
I was gonna say, man, it's really difficult for you. Well, I mean, it's crazy because
Okay, you can leave it there. That's a 7-figure deal. That means it's in the millions. I don't think millions of his followers are going to go buy gold for the advertisement. This is a way you buy off social media personalities, especially with a gold sponsorship. You look at Mark Levin, he's a traditional neocon. Nick's views are becoming more and more neocon. He's talking about, go into Venezuela, go into this country, go into that country, American power. When he was completely America first, non-interventionalist for so long, all of a sudden those views are changing, and now he's getting a 7-figure deal from a gold company.
Well, he was complaining recently that Rumble wasn't giving him a deal, and why was Nick Shirley getting a deal? But just them sitting there awkwardly, they look like they're in a college dorm. Like when I went to college, there were it was a specific sector of students that were studying business, and they would always wear their suits and think they looked very adult, and then like they were going to be like these business moguls, and it was just awkward and weird. And I'm no one to talk. I'm super awkward, but. How are they leading the movement of masculinity, conservatism, and men? Like,
the bigger point is they're all getting massive contracts right now, and a lot of their political views are shifting in a very specific direction. At the same time, they're getting these contracts. You can't buy them off just before an election. You have to do it a couple of years out and slowly feed their base where you want to kind of direct them. Otherwise, it's going to be very obvious here. Why don't we go into the next clip?
I was going to say, and what are they doing with that money? They're buying ridiculous suits. From Clavicular Alerts. Clavicular and Sneeko got 15,000 tailored Uka Boss suits each. Sad that it just makes them look really gay.
Yeah, I don't want to mess up his pockets at all.
You should flash max it.
Yeah, I think flash. No mic suit.
They literally look like metrosexuals. I mean, this could appeal to the left, possibly, and maybe that's why they're going to make this transition to the left and be this metrosexual masculinity. I could see the left actually possibly adopting that, especially if they critique a few things there. The right's not going to buy that whatsoever. That being said, they're in $15,000 suits. Clavicular, I was researching him. In December alone, he made $550,000 plus sponsorship money. I mean, they're making millions of dollars. This isn't coming organically, or at least a lot of it isn't coming organically. We're going to get into Sneeko too. The article I have about Sneeko, I think his contract was actually half that amount, but it's still in the millions.
But like masculinity is about protecting women, having children, building a foundation, building a legacy, working, doing something productive with your life, not flashing $15,000 suits and oh, we're in the club, we're doing this, we're doing that, we have the ladies.
Well,
I'm
and
not
the
going to call
way
them what they call them.
the way that clavicular kid actually treats women is absolutely disgusting. No matter who it is, he was
He
never
injected Botox into his 17-year-old
he was
girlfriend.
never really raised properly. At least when it comes to Nick, I can have some sympathy. He was canceled for absolute years. He had to be shuttered in his house. People were coming to his house, literally trying to assassinate him multiple times. He couldn't make any money. I mean, the fact that he's making money now, okay, but it's
But that's not the direction you should be going with the money that he's making. And I do understand that, yes, he's a lot younger than everybody else. I mean, there was Charlie Kirk, who was kind of around that age, but unfortunately he's no longer here. Everybody else within the conservative movement, at least the big ones that he's been talking to, it's Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, they're all in their 50s and 60s. Of course he doesn't want to go hang out with them, but to choose this set of people from those, he's making a big mistake.
It'd be fine to you can
hang out with them, but don't make it a thing.
He needs to make content as well. You need to understand, and he needs to lean into his brand and not be like at the club with a bunch of freaking douchebags. I mean, Andrew Tate, yeah, he could be a douchebag, but he does have conversations about moral fabric and what masculinity means, and having those conversations and having conversations with Nick on that, who's much smarter than him on a lot of subjects, would be very interesting and would actually be productive. Okay, let's keep going here. Nobody's watching but me.
This is why I didn't want to get into the subject. From Kick Clips, a fan asks Clavicular and Sneeko when they'll collab with Nick Fuentes, but they say no because they don't want to risk brand deals.
Yeah, and I think this is the young generation of what conservative influencers are, and I think they're going to go to the left in the next election cycle, and I think it's planned, and I think they're bought off.
Have a good night, bro.
Yep. What are you guys both going to do the collab with Nick Fuentes?
Can't talk about that.
Yeah. Can't talk about that.
Yeah. But
maybe in the future.
Yeah.
Us?
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
All right.
Well, bro,
I don't want to lose my brand deals, bro. I'm not going to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to him? He's watching the stream right now.
Just looking to mock people.
Have a good night, bro.
It's interesting. He said, "I don't want to lose my brand deals. I'm not going to talk to Nick Fuentes." Now Nick Fuentes has a 7-figure deal, and they all want to talk to each other.
Including Sneeko has one from Kick Champ. Sneeko trolls XQC after getting his $30 million Kick deal and tells.
And it wasn't $30 million. The rumor was it was $8 million, which is a ton of money. Even if it was $1 or $2 million, this is insane.
If this is actually true, and it's true, I quit. I kick myself off the platform. I'm outie.
Peace, nigga.
And I kind of just brought up this clip to show each of their deals they've been getting in succession, and their political views have been changing in the direction that they're going.
Here's that socks video.
And this is just cringe. This is not real masculinity. If they're going to try to sell masculinity to the right through these individuals, I don't know what happened to masculinity, but this isn't it.
So he convinced Sneeko to put socks inside his shoes so they could be taller.
Way worse than that. Okay.
So what I'm thinking is, we should put a bunch of socks inside of this.
You're taller, right?
No, bro.
No, you're 6'2".
Yeah, but we should be 6'3".
I'm legally 6'3" on my ID.
So let's be 6'4".
I'm
Where
good.
this goes, it's about excellency. Oh yeah, I'm doing good. I'm above average. It's like that's still only the 93rd percentile.
I want a girl to like me for my personality.
I've never heard anything so gay before.
Okay, so we're gonna put socks on our shoes.
Yeah. So.
And fuck up our heels.
Yeah, but we're gonna also mug. So. You want to mug or do you want to be?
Okay, and you can kind of leave
Stuff
it.
them down your pants too, why don't you?
You can kind of leave it there, but this kid is just so insecure in who he is. And if you've seen pictures when he's younger, you understand why he's insecure now. And he's never really gotten rid of that. He's never built a real personality or a real foundation for himself. So he's having to find self-worth through things that there are no self-worth in. And that is his looks and other things like this.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to become an influencer that's going to influence other kids, but he's not going to influence them in a good way.
But this is why I've been complaining about Andrew Tate for the longest time, because this is what he has been teaching young guys.
just
And now there's the young guys that see his success and want to emulate it, but take it even further and make everything about the material, no foundations, no morals, no values, no actual proof of conservatism or of
and I'll disagree a little bit.
Or of being able to be guided towards a life that is actually worth living.
Yeah, a lot of things, Andrew. I didn't agree with Andrew Tate on everything, but when he first came up, he did have good masculine principles. He did preach to men about working out, about improving yourself, and he really had.
But he attached it to the materialism.
Hold
of,
on, hold on. He had first principles, and he had a line of logic. He didn't always attach it to that. He would add that in, but after his cancellation and governments really started going after him, he's begun to sell out. He doesn't talk about those principles anymore, and this is the next generation that is far more shallow than even Andrew Tate. If you think Andrew Tate was bad, he was a man compared to these individuals.
These are the people that ideology and that way of thinking builds. This is what you get. This is what you end up with. These kinds of non-men soy boys, but on the other side now. And now women are left with even less, more estrogenized men.
Well, and I would actually say the out of the three young influencers that were there, Sneeko, Clavicle, and Nick actually represents masculinity, even though he looks the least masculine because he has knowledge and intellect.
Yes, he has knowledge and intellect, but none of them are married that I know of. None of them have stable relationships.
But I will say that
none of them are trying to build anything past themselves.
Yeah, but I will say this in Nick's defense. How is he going to get married when they're going to use that as a vector of attack against him?
No, I think he's married because he's interested in
I think he's very aware of that's a major vector of attack.
That too, but
okay, let's keep going here if we can.
They preach a lot and then they don't do it. From Autism Capital quote, Tristan Tate says he disagrees with Clavicular for saying he'll vote for Gavin Newsom and that he'll be voting for JD Vance.
I went viral for basically saying she has an American. I said I was going to vote for Gavin Newsom because he loved JD Vance. You know what I mean? I called JD Vance a fat subhuman.
I heard that. And I would advise you that you're wrong. However, you're an American, I'm an American, so I don't tell other Americans who to vote. I never have. You vote for whoever you like. But Gavin Newsom's running against JD Vance. I will be voting for JD Vance, and that's my vote. You can do it with yours. I would disagree with you, but if you're smart, you could disagree with people and not turn it into a big fucking heated argument that ends in a fist fight, you know? And I can do that, and you can do that, I hope. So you vote for whoever you like, but I'm voting JD. So.
I'm voting for America. That's probably going to be JD.
That's what I feel.
And you can leave it there. And he's surrounded through a bunch of people that should be in. That kid took a payoff, I'm telling you, and it's already obvious this far out from the election.
Mm-hmm. But I will say
but at least that last generation is still going to vote conservative.
I'll take Nick out of it a little bit, but for the rest and for Sneeko and on the smaller creators that still make a big impact, but that are following this kind of same materialistic, non-male, metrosexual, whatever you want to call it, is that they are the Frankenstein monsters that Dr. Andrew Frankenstein and Tristan Frankenstein built. And the other two, what are they called? Fresh and Fit. And all of those that were still had some instilled conservative values, but now we're seeing I don't think it's the end point, unfortunately, but we're seeing the result of just focusing on the cars, the girls, the this, the that you got to be a better man for yourself. No, you got to be a better man to build a legacy and to actually improve the country you live in.
Well, if they took the payouts already, that being Sneeko and Clavicular, the midterms are coming up. I expect them to show some of their cards there, and especially when 2028 comes, you're going to see a hard left turn. They're going to try to be masculine role models for the left, saying, oh, these are the errors of my way. This is what's wrong with the right. I used to be there. And then they're going to try to be the new Hassans of the left. Mm-hmm. There are no people on the left like that. And
even Hassan called
they understand that they're not only going to get the payoff, they can build an audience there, and it's completely false. It's completely fake, and they're willing to sell out their nation, their family, and their communities for it.
Even Hassan called them homo. It's like that's the level we're at now. But we have been talking for years now about the infiltration of the left in churches and into religion, and how they're putting on the face mask of religion to continue with their ideology and to continue to perpetrate that. This might be another avenue that they're using, or essentially it's connected, but using these kids for that.
Yeah.
Don't fall for it. Let's move on to Nick Shirley, another young kid, but I respect him a bit more at least. From Nick Shirley, he says, quote, I sat down with a journalist who claims to be left-leaning, and what does he do? Edits a 2.5-hour-long interview into a 1 hour and cuts out any part where he looks bad.
Well, and this was interesting because I actually watched the Channel 5 interview with him. I thought it was a really good interview. I knew it was a left and a right journalist. I had watched Channel 5 I've watched them for years since they were a very small channel, even though they're left-leaning. They sometimes hit on conservative topics, but they're a good perspective if you want to understand the right. So when I watched the interview, I didn't think they made him look bad. I thought it was a fairly honest interview, but now when I see what they cut out and knowing they cut out over an hour of the interview, I lost some respect for Channel 5 here.
And he continues, journalism is only journalism when you show the truth. When you only post what will benefit yourself and party, it becomes propaganda.
All right, this is super important, and I also learned a great lesson here. So the other week, I sat down with Andrew Callahan in Channel 5 to do a sit-down podcast.
Sorry, and he must have set up a phone, so he recorded the whole interview as well, which was fantastic. The first person to do that, I believe, was Andrew Tate, and he set up cameras secretly, and then he exposed the mainstream media to do that. I think that sent a message to a lot of the right. So going forward, I hope this is a lesson for anybody else that does interviews with left-leaning media, whether that be independent or mainstream. Set up your own camera in the room.
Style interview for his channel. And when he goes and posts the video, I see he just posted an hour-long interview. I said, well, that's weird, because we actually spoke for around 2.5 hours. And then I go and watch the interview, and I'm saying, well, what is this? This is not what happened. For instance, this clip right here.
What American city is prospering right now? Austin. Austin. Name another one. El Paso, Texas. El Paso, Texas is prospering? Yeah. Nashville's doing good. Phoenix is doing good. Basically, any place with low state tax is getting a lot of... And any place that's not Democrat. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, name a Democrat city that's prospering right now. Well, it would have to be one that's affordable. Name one. Denver. Why are you smirking? It's not prospering.
All right, so that's the clip Andrew posted, but this is the actual interaction of how it went.
Denver. Why are you smirking? Because I don't know if it's prospering. It's not. See, you can't even answer the question. It's not prospering. Denver's not prospering either. States are doing that.
Kind of weird that Andrew didn't put that in, right? Maybe his base or something would not be happy with that response because he obviously got caught lying. And anyways, let's move over to the next topic when we're talking about Somalians being known for pirating, as 89% of the fraud that has been charged inside of Minnesota is by Somalians. This is the interaction that Andrew posted.
Somali community, or do you see it as both? 89% of the fraud is being committed by Somalians. Where exactly is that statistic from? You can pull it up on the screen. You'll find it. I just want to know where it's from. You want me to find it right now? For sure, just so I can, I don't know, I believe you. I just want to make sure we have the exact. Here, right here. Yeah, and it's not racist to say it. Probably. And when I go...
This is what happens when I show him the fact that 89% of the people who have been charged for fraud in Minnesota are Somalians. This is what Andrew had to say. But remember, he conveniently left this out of the interview.
89% of those charged in connection with Mayroom. Wow, identifying small immigrants. Well, looks like we definitely do that. I'm interested to see what you put in this interview, because it looks like there's a problem with fraud.
So there you go. That's just two examples from the interview with Andrew Callahan where he literally went out of his way to try and make me look bad, which is not cool. And I wouldn't say that's very
Okay, you can leave it there.
By any means, but
and I'll say this: it's a shame that they treated him like that, because Nick Shirley actually looked up to Andrew Callahan, and many years ago he seen him at an event. He said, "Hi, I'm a big fan of yours. Maybe we can collab sometime," and he never contacted him back. Now Andrew Callahan's trying to build the name off him now that Nick Shirley is getting big, and he's doing it in a very deceitful way. I'm also glad I watched that entire interview. I thought it was a great interview when I watched it. Problem was, I noticed something very, very odd, and it was every 5 or 10 minutes there would be a bunch of generic B-roll thrown in there, and that usually doesn't happen on a lot of their interviews. It's very they have a very raw style where they just have one camera set up and then they play the whole interview. Usually, there's a lot of weird B-roll put in there that I see is from editing sites like Envato and stuff, and I'm like, why are they putting the shitty B-roll in here? Relating to topics, because they wanted to put cuts in there and they wanted to hide the cuts. I should have known that, but I said the interview didn't look that bad. I guess they took out all the parts that made them look bad.
And if that's each part where they use B-roll, then it was a lot.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, should we be surprised? No. Should we be disappointed? Probably, because they continue to frame themselves as being like the truth seekers on the left, or at least partially connected to the left. And unfortunately, they've also now had some involvement here in Mexico because they're collaborating, or they're now taken under their wing. Also a very lefty influencer, I don't know if I would call him, called Proyecto Escolar with Tropics Media, who are now fully on board with Channel 5. So that's disappointing too. Not surprising though.
Okay.
I will read the comments that we have. Walker, hello Walker, says, hey guys, Nick Fuentes for president. No, I'm joking. I mean, eventually.
Well, he might. And
I don't think he'd be good for president.
This is my thing about Nick. I think the other two influencers that we showed there have already directly taken payoffs. I think they're going to make a hard left turn, if not come the midterms, come the 2028 election. I think they're going to try to court the left audience, and I think they've been paid to do so. Nick Fuentes, on the other hand, I don't think he's going to court the left audience. I think he's going to try to sabotage the right candidate, the candidate on the right, that being if it's J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio, to try to help Gavin Newsom out, because he knows if Gavin Newsom wins, it will benefit his political career the most. If the United States starts to fail economically under Gavin Newsom and loses all moral foundation and takes a hard left, it benefits Nick immensely. In that type of environment, I could see Nick running for president.
He needs to get things worse before he can try to make them better. MUA says Velvet Mafia. I'd say Liberace Mafia. Like, that's the point of where we're at right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely cringe. The right's not going to accept that as masculinity. So that's why I think they're definitely going to make a hard left turn at some point, and they're going to become the new Hassans.
Again, Hassan even made fun of them. Walker says, certainly here in El Salvador, left, they've been involved in the Catholic Church since the 70s, La Teología de la Liberación, or the Theology of Liberation. And I have covered, at least in Spanish, the whole Vatican II and the involvement and the bringing in of socialism and communism into Latin America by the Catholic Church and some entities within the Catholic Church. Maybe we can do an expanded video about that. But yes, and again, I won't be surprised. It seems like in the U.S., it's starting to look like it's the Protestant branches of it and the evangelical branches.
Well, no, we're going to talk a little bit about Germany and Catholicism in Germany and the Catholic Church, and there might be a schism coming here within this year, possibly.
And we also have comments on RUMBLE from Ethel about Gavin Newsom. Ethel says, I think we should stop voting gays in for once. For me, it wouldn't be like, if they were gay, for example, but we're talking about conservatism, etc., but they were out and it was an acknowledged fact, then it would be like, okay, but it's also the hypocrisy of them claiming to want one thing for the country and want to fight for the country and then doing the exact opposite in the materialistic and in actual sense.
Yeah, I used to not have a big problem with gays or the gay community. The problem I had is the political LGBTQ wing and its complete radicalization of not only that community, but the general population and young people. It's just been extremely off-putting for me, and I don't have anything really good to say about that community. They need to clean up their own community if they want respect from the rest of society.
As would any other community.
Yeah.
Same with the Somalians. If they want respect for the Somali community, don't commit fraud. From Ethel, also, they are not metrosexual, guy. They are dead right homosexual, which is what I said. I said homosexual in simpler terms. Gay and sponsored by gays in the system, run by gays. It's an invasion and a gay invasion. We're losing.
Yeah, and I usually don't mind playing Nick Fuentes clips because I think there's something respectable there in some of his opinions. That being said, I'm sorry I played so many clips from those guys. A lot of those clips were cringe, but I just want to posit my theory early on. So when the midterms come up and the 2028 election comes up, if that does happen, we'll know the signs for when right-wing influencers are being paid off. Because the arguments that they're going to make, you're going to see other influencers on the right make the same arguments, but not go over to the left. I also think Candace Owens is going to go over to the left come the 2028 election.
Ethel also says, the real question is, why are they gay? And Ethel also says,
Nick turned them all gay.
And funnily enough, Nick is the most moral one of them, of that group, not of everybody, of that group. And it also says, no, Nat, you're not getting it. Voting Gazin is spiritually wrong. You'll get it later. I don't say vote for them. I'm saying like it would be like the worst thing would be the hypocrisy and the lying, which they already represent. So
well, everybody knows my views on voting, and that is only families should have the right to vote, and it should be families with children because they have a long-term invested interest in the future of the country.
And for me, it's more about having served your country in some sort of way. I don't think just anybody could. Because then you were invested in your country. Okay, let's move on to, what is it, Australia,
Asia, and then we're going to get into religion. And I like the religion section today because there's some big stories.
Oh, hold on. Trent Briggs says, Megyn Kelly sways her opinion for sponsors or for friendships or for feminism.
Yeah, feminism is Megyn Kelly's big Achilles heel. And I think it's going to become more and more so, especially as I think the right becomes more religious.
And she's coming from mainstream news and she's used to reading from a teleprompter, whatever they say. So when she's asked to have an own opinion and an own thought of her own, it gets a bit harder to, sustain it.
It's so obvious, like, and she's worked for mainstream media, so she thinks, oh, as long as I'm telling the truth 75% of the time, it's fine. The other 25%, I need to make money. I need my sponsors.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Australia. Still talking about the whole hate speech thing in Australia. Oh, hold on. There we go. From Marian Alfball. However, now there's an update. Australia pulls hate speech laws to save the gun reforms. Anthony Albanese just pulled a political U-turn, splitting up his controversial hate speech bill after backlash and deadlock fears. The mega bill is now broken apart to make sure major gun reforms still make it through Parliament.
Yeah, and this happens in every country. And there's actually an update to this story where they took out a lot less than we thought they took out. So we're going to play that directly after this. That being said, this happens in all countries. So when you think something's resolved or the government's backing down, they're just repackaging it and putting it somewhere else that's going to go unnoticed.
Anthony Albanese has performed a stunning backflip, changing controversial hate speech legislation amid fears the new laws would stall. The Prime Minister will now split the mega bill. He says the move ensures major gun reforms will pass Parliament.
On the eve of historic hate speech reforms, Anthony Albanese changes his mind.
It is time that the politics stopped.
Presenting a new plan he hopes will pass the Parliament, Labor needing the support of either the Coalition or the Greens in the Senate.
We will not be proceeding with the racial vilification provisions.
Removing the clause that made it an offence to publicly promote or incite racial hatred following the Bondi terror attack. Offenders would have faced 5 years jail for graffiti, communication through social media, displaying flags and distributing material that caused a person or group to fear for their safety.
We will only proceed with measures that have the support of the Parliament.
Anglican Archbishop Michael Stead telling 7 News that part of the legislation was a problem.
Faith leaders are very concerned that the bill criminalises speech that should not be criminal. When you criminalise hate speech at that kind of level, you end up with all kinds of people being brought before the courts who ought not to be there.
The Greens worried about the impact on freedom of speech.
Can be used to shut down political discourse and the right to protest.
The Prime Minister's changes ensure Labor's historic gun reforms will pass the Senate with help from the Greens.
The Greens are more than willing to work with the government to pass gun law reforms.
From the federal opposition leader tonight, his colleagues were right to label this a show.
Senior members of the coalition all called for hate speech to be outlawed.
Susan Lee asking more than 20 times for Parliament to be recalled, only to then say the Prime Minister was moving too fast.
The coalition were calling for this to all be finished before Christmas.
Okay, and this is the government propaganda line. As you see, they have a preacher there, and then they have the Prime Minister saying, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to do the gun reform. Everybody agrees with gun reform, but they're actually packing that gun reform with a lot of the speech stuff as well. It's not like what they're showing. We're going to show a different article in just a moment. But I also want to talk a little bit about Canada here. There's a new sentiment, and that is the Liberal government under Mark Carney in Canada has a major gun buyback and gun reform coming where they want to take massive amounts of guns from the Canadian public. The problem is their elbows up campaign is working against them now, especially with Trump talking about taking Greenland, which these they have so much TDS up there, they actually believe it. A lot of liberals are saying, no, we want to keep our guns now because we need to protect ourselves from the United States of America, which is absolutely insane. But it's nice to see that liberals actually want to keep gun rights for once.
But the thing is also, it does kind of also look ridiculous and bad on them because they're taking away provisions that initially they were saying were very important and they had to censor this speech because it's horrible to offend people and flags and inciting hatred. And now they're just taking it off, which they actually aren't fully, but still, it doesn't look good either way. From Zoomer, quote, the Australian hate speech bill has not been shut down, seeing a lot of false reports regarding this.
What's happening with Labor's hate speech bill? Well, they've had a lot of opposition, and some people now think it's been scrapped. No, what's really happened is Labor has split the bill. They weren't getting a lot of support from Greens leadership or from the coalition, but they obviously would have anticipated this resistance, okay? They're not stupid. So what they've done is split the bill into different parts and only removed one small aspect of it. Everything is basically still in it. They've just gone back on some aspect of the racial vilification laws they wanted to impose, but all of the hate speech and hate crime stuff is all still there. What the government is doing there is called political highballing. Imagine it this way. Let's say you want to sell a bike for $500, but the initial price you put on it for buyers is $2,000. And all the buyers say, that's way too expensive. We'll give you $300 for it. Then you say, I think I need $1,000 actually. Then the buyers say $400. And you say, you know what? I'll settle at $500. You win. So the buyers end up walking away thinking they got a good deal. But in reality, you just duped them into believing that because you only ever wanted $500 from the start. And that's what you sold it for. It's called highballing. And in this case, it's political highballing. The government is still trying to outlaw political groups as hate groups without any procedural fairness and without any criminal conviction required. The hate crime legislation hasn't changed. The hate speech stuff is all still in there. Just because Labor has gone back on one aspect of the bill and agreed to split it into different sections, that's not a victory for the other parties. It's certainly not a victory for the people. The government is still trying to get what it wanted from the start, which is criminalising speech and outlawing political organisations as hate criminals, imposing lengthy jail sentences on anyone who's even suspected of being a member of a hate group or committing hate speech without any procedural fairness or any due process. If you've been calling or emailing your local MPs to express your dissatisfaction, keep doing it because nothing has essentially changed. Everything is still the same. Our freedoms are still at stake.
Yeah, and that's why they had the propaganda piece with the priest up there and the prime minister and them talking about, oh, half the bill is gone now. It's not gone. Almost everything's there. They had a few provisions they knew they would take out anyway to negotiate a final resolution to this. They're stripping freedoms en masse from the people of Australia. They're doing it in the UK and the EU as well. You need to push back, and you need to push back to the point they're just not going to split the bill. They're going to get rid of it completely and even put in legislation that will protect your constitutional rights to free speech. And if you don't have constitutional rights in your country, you need to get constitutional rights through your politicians by putting mass amounts of pressure on them.
But from Australia's versus the agenda, quote, David Shoebridge says the Greens can't support amending the hate speech bill because of the overreaching terms in the legislation, arguing it would require surgical changes to become viable.
From the overreach with words like promote, to the lack of defences, to protecting only one religion and leaving other vulnerable groups without protection, that's not amendments. That's fundamental radical surgery. And there is no way that the federal parliament can rush that kind of fundamental legal reform in just a matter of a few days or a few hours. From the overreach,
okay,
words
and
like promote.
Basically what he's saying, this is somebody from the Green Party, he's not going to vote for the bill, but not because he wants to get rid of things, but because he wants more protected groups. He wants to strip more of your rights. And that's what's insane about this. You don't need protected groups or protected classes. What you need is one law that's equal for everybody. The same law addresses every person the same.
And from Trent Briggs, he says we shouldn't censor speech, and that shouldn't be a controversial thing to say, and it shouldn't be. It should be an obvious thing to say too. But
there's so much propaganda from, especially the West, other than the United States. You see it coming out of Canada, the EU, Australia, the UK. They're all pushing for specialty groups and hate speech. Most hate speech laws are actually brought in on the back of a specialty group, whether that be Muslims, Jews, or Christians, or women. First, they make the specialty group, and then they say if you use this speech against the specialty group, that's hate speech. So.
And Rafa says hello. Hello, Rafa. Thank you for being here. Sorry for abandoning you on Friday on the Spanish stream. But tonight, we'll see you there. I'm streaming in Spanish, doing a live show in Spanish after this. But let's move on to Asia for now.
Asia and then religion.
We rarely have stuff about Asia, so.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen our video about Mark Carney selling out to the CCP as a Chinese puppet, I highly recommend it. That being said, that video is getting massively throttled. Anytime we make a video on China, it gets throttled. And I think that's why I don't have a lot of Asian news a lot of the time. I think it gets throttled on X as well. So it doesn't make it into the algorithm and it doesn't cross my feed a lot.
Yeah. But from South Korea, the Monarch report says, quote, the story Western media isn't covering from South Korea. Former President Yoon Suk-yeol, I think, was just sentenced to ending for insurrection. The day after, thousands in the streets chanting not guilty and calling him the real president. Here's what you need to understand. In December 2024, Yoon declared martial law for 6 hours. He accused the opposition of collaborating with North Korean communists and running a legislative dictatorship. The National Assembly overturned it. He was impeached, then removed. His rival Lee Yang-myung now holds power. Now Yoon faces 8 criminal trials. One resulted in an ending sentence last week, yet his supporters aren't backing down. After the January 17th Freedom University rally, crowds chanted not guilty, Republic of Korea. The real president is him, and eliminate the main enemy of the republic.
Yeah, and this is absolutely insane. This would be the equivalent of Donald Trump went on trial and then was given a sentence of the ending of his life. I don't think you should be giving sentences like that out to many politicians. Maybe there's a special example. This isn't one of those examples, I don't think.
Yeah,
now, what I think what he did wasn't right, but it's a slight overreach of power. It doesn't mean you need to be taking his life.
Says young conservative men have joined the movement. Some wave American flags and wear MAGA hats. South Korea hasn't ended anyone since 1997, but the symbolism matters. The same pattern emerging globally, leaders, and we know that.
Yeah, as they start putting on MAGA hats, waving America flags, I think this is the plea to Donald Trump to kind of step in and say something. If he says something, they're likely not going to execute that sentence. Okay, that's good. Let's go
into show the American flag.
Let's go into the last story in the Asian section, and then we'll go into religion.
Because that segment's big. Unsurprisingly, but and I have a few stories about this.
And this was actually when we watched the video, it's very propaganda-like, but I really just wanted to use it to bring up the conversation.
From Peter Schweitzer, quote, the invisible coup exposes Manchurian generation, how the CCP is building an army of U.S. citizens raised in China through birth tourism and surrogacy.
We all saw Biden's border madness. But what if the next invasion is invisible? Through birth tourism, over 1 million Chinese nationals born on U.S. soil could soon be voting in American elections from inside China. Meet the Manchurian generation, U.S. citizens on paper who've never lived in America, educated in CCP-controlled schools, indoctrinated against us, yet eligible to vote in our elections. #1 New York Times bestselling author Peter Schweitzer exposes the next threat we face. This isn't immigration. This is a political weapon. Read the book that reveals the invisible coup.
You can leave it there. And it was very heavy-handed and propaganda-like, but it is a real thing that is going on. I'm even more concerned about a Manchurian candidate from another country kind of taking over a presidency. A lot of talk with Vivek. Vivek's not that kind of character because he was actually raised in the United States. But if a Chinese citizen his mother came over here, gave birth, and then took that child back to China, they would be entitled to run for the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, with all of this, it also happens a lot in Canada. And I mentioned over and over again that I used to work at 2 different high schools in Vancouver, Canada, and they were international schools, so students from all over the place. And a lot of the Chinese, also some of the Korean, but mostly all of the Chinese students were actual Canadian citizens, and they had just moved, because it was high school, just moved to Canada. They were living in houses by themselves while their parents were still back in China, and had a bunch of luxuries, and clearly those apartments were a way to, have money in the country for them. But I was always surprised that none of the other students from Mexico, Iran, etc., were Canadian citizens, but almost all the Chinese students were. So it means they had been born there, then left because they spoke almost no English, and then came back. So it is happening. I got to experience it firsthand.
Well, also in a country like Canada, where the population is only 40 million and they're allowing over 1 million immigrants in a year for citizenship, that dramatically changes the voter rolls over 10 or 20 years. It's going to be primarily immigrants that are going to decide the election.
And similar to Muslims, which is also in their steps to follow, this is essentially colonization without having to actually fully go to war, at least not yet.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into...
Hold on, we do have a
we do.
comment. Ethel asks, Guy, what is your reaction to being called a gringo in Mexico?
Oh, I could care less.
We have a picture of you standing, because at one point they were doing a bunch of protests here in the...
Well, I would go out to
the
I would go to these woke protests, filming you and Billboard Chris. They call you a racist, a Nazi, all kinds of things. Like, if that's not going to that didn't get to me, somebody called me a gringo is not going to get to me at all.
Yeah, they called me a colonizer back in Canada when they didn't know I was Mexican, but it is funny that in a way, as a migrant, I kind of was. But yeah, I've had people on my channel in Spanish yell at me for calling him a gringo and say, oh, we don't use that word. And it's like, it's not an insult. I don't think it's an insult. Do you think it's an insult?
I could care less.
But let's move on to religion, because there are some things happening.
There's quite a few stories in there.
I know. In the U.S. We can skip some of them.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
But it is all mostly about what happened in Minnesota over the weekend at a church where Don Lemon and his acolytes decided to go harass people. From American AF, quote, Don Lemon is now storming churches and harassing pastors who support ICE deporting criminal illegal immigrants. If it plays.
Think of it. I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will...
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus, because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world, is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we're here. That's what we're about.
Do you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a
no
Christian?
one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to
unless you're here to worship. Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And we're going to see Don Lemon clarify that later. Yeah, he might be a Christian, just not that kind of Christianity. That being said, they need to leave that private property. Like, we're going to show a video later of what they actually did when they went over there. They started flipping tables and yelling at people within the congregation. This is absolutely ridiculous, especially we know what their ideology is, and we know they're going in there not to change hearts and minds, but just to literally disrespect a church and the individuals within the church.
Well, we know Marxism and communism are completely against any type of religion because they want theirs to be the religion du jour. But what happened was over the weekend, the crazy Minnesota anti-ICE protests had a direct action planned to go into this church, and apparently Don Lemon just found himself there. However, there's more to this story, and I can't get to it until the guy comes back. Okay, I'll play it. Because again, there was quite a bit of video, and now there are more and more updates about what is going to happen to Don Lemon for doing this and for being there and for obviously encouraging it too.
I don't necessarily agree with everything that's going on.
Sorry. So this is from End Wokeness and says, this is everybody's house. Don Lemon berates a St. Paul parishioner for not being welcoming to the anti-ICE mob storming the church service, because of course, why would he?
On the Twin Cities right now, but I don't think it's good to fight fire with fire. I think it's good to speak up, and I think it's good to protest, but I think it's better to do it in a peaceful way. I don't think the answer is going to God's church.
You don't think this is peaceful?
Well, it's trespassing.
Nobody fighting.
It's trespassing. How would you feel if I went to your house and I started yelling?
It depends on what I did, but not in my house. That's a whole different thing. I think these people would go inside of anybody's house.
Well, this is the house of God.
Everybody's house.
Yes, it is. But in a house, people don't yell at each other.
Yeah, but there was a lot of yelling in my house growing up. We still love each other.
That's why you're afraid. Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that yelling is the answer, right? I'm sorry? That doesn't necessarily mean yelling is the answer, right?
No, but I think that's the way you work things out is that you talk to each other, you disagree. Sometimes it's heated, sometimes it's not. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And I think
that's not the time or the place for this. Like,
No.
you're bringing your protest inside a place of God, number one. But number two, a lot of these people might be scared to come back now.
Mm-hmm.
maybe if the pastor would like try to calm things down and say, let's all talk together and make this peaceful and not be so us against them.
I think that's good to talk, but then why don't we do that, right? I don't think trespassing, I think protesting on the streets is fine, but I think there's a difference between that and then going into someone's property.
And I also think this is a very soft Christian church. And that's what they were kind of expecting when they went in there. They thought they would come in there and pressure the pastor into having a talk so they can convince their congregation that they're on the wrong side of this and they need to come out and protest themselves.
They just want to be
They need Christianity, especially Protestant Christianity, is all about loving Jesus. But there's a harder side, and people need to start taking a harder line. And when they do stuff like that, kick them out. Literally grab them and drag them out of the church.
And that's the thing. It's Don Lemon and the protesters saying, "Oh, why don't you want to discuss this? Why don't you want to have a conversation?" When we're going to show bust in through the doors, scaring everybody. There's children there as well, and start yelling for no reason. But now he's asking why they can't have a discussion. And there's another one.
You put a lot of
Well, yeah, because I'm angry at this guy. From Defiant L's, Don Lemon gets triggered after a man schools him. He even goes and follows the man trying to leave. This is why they don't want to talk to you.
These people have come into our house and they've interrupted our worship. This is a house of peace, and we try to proclaim that. And this stirs division and rancor. And in the end, it's not helpful. Ultimately, I believe they've lost. They've emptied a house of worship. Everybody's gone home. Their point has been proven worthless. And so, in the end, I think they lose. But more importantly, if I was to break into any of their houses uninvited, cause derision and upset according to their values, I would be kicked out ultimately. It's not a good way. I feel violated. I feel interrupted. I feel angry.
Can I ask you something? When you were saying if you had showed up at their house, they're saying that people are showing up at houses where they're citizens without due process and breaking and entering. One that we saw, I've been watching from New York, the battering ram into someone's private property, and there's no recourse. There's no, you understand what I'm saying?
This is all part of a much larger dialogue, in my opinion. You know, one side are people who watched a previous administration bring 12 million people in over the course of 4 years. And many of them undocumented, many of them criminals, etc. This is another administration's corrective. Now, whether you agree with the policies or procedures, I think I could actually be sympathetic to some of the things where there have been.
Well, I'm glad they got a good shot of all their faces, so hopefully they start making an arrest on those people.
Well,
but why don't we get to one of the clips where they actually show what they were doing?
Well, that main one that we saw was actually identified as a lawyer and a prominent paid for protester that does this quite frequently. But so what they did initially was this.
Renee, go! Renee, go! Renee, go!
The one leading the chants there has been identified as someone that does this frequently.
Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Wimble every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you? You drink your coffee, you got your jewelry, you have your nice clothes, but what do you do? What do you do to stand for your Somali and Latino communities? You have no comment. Exactly. Renee, good. Renee, good. All these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives in your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit as a preacher. Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No. Jesus would die with immigrants. You do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens. You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity? Where are you? You're sinners. You're pretending to be Christians. But we know you live an easy life, don't you? A very easy life while people are starving. Shame. Out now. Out now. Living real comfortable while the people starve. Living real comfortable while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're all living real comfortable, aren't you? Shame on you. Do something. Stand with the Somalis. Stand with the Latinos. Quit ignoring this injustice. He wears a suit and tie, and he hangs out with Chrissy Nome. How is that a Christian? You're supposed to accept all immigrants, are you not? Why are you not going down to Whipple and joining us in protest against this inhumanity? You claim to be a Christian. Act like one.
Yeah, and this is a good thing this happened because this is going to get out to the eyes of a lot of people, and the Christian community is really going to stand against what happened here. And that's what these people don't understand. We played the clip at the beginning of the show where the protesters said, we're winning. We got 30 people to go down to that the ICE van, and we got that gentleman let go. Yeah, but the video is out there, and you bragging about it, it's out there, and it's turning the American people against you. When you do protests like this and you kick people out of their own church, you heard him say, you must go, you must go, you must go. It's going to turn America, especially middle America, against you.
And I have 2 points on this. It's not the first or last time we have seen something horrible, actually horrible, lives ended in a church by people that are looking to do and to make harm against people and to do harm against people. So of course, that's point number one, what they're doing. Yes, it's interrupting, but how do the churchgoers and the pastor know that they're not there to shoot him up? Which has happened over and over again. And point number two is, I forgot my point number two.
Well, they have to keep the church doors open. That's the thing. So these people are going to have access to these churches. I wouldn't be surprised if this happens more and more and more. And to be honest with you, if it does happen more and more and more, I won't mind it because I think the American people would turn against these protests if that does happen.
But I remember now, and they might turn against the protests. The thing is, the protesters, and they've continued to chant this at every single protest, but especially now with the whole ICE thing in Minnesota, is you're either with us or against us. They've also been they harassed some app developers that they thought looked like they were ICE, and they chased them out of a restaurant. And they said, you're either with us or against us. Why won't you denounce ICE? And the guys were like, I'm an app developer for a bunch of companies. I have nothing to do with ICE. Yeah, but
when you keep yelling, are you with us or against us, eventually they're going to say, we're against you.
Yes. So, I mean, in that sense, I think it is an effective tactic for those with reason and logic, but I do want to give an update as to what might happen to not just Don Lemon, but all the other people there.
Yeah, this is actually pretty interesting. Yes. And it's interesting because Don Lemon is gay, he is a minority, and it is Martin Luther King Day, and they're going to charge him with the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871.
Yeah, so and this was Assistant Attorney General Harmy Dillon, who has been doing a pretty good job, but she doesn't get as much attention usually, talking to Benny Johnson.
We will pursue charges in this case. I see various crimes that have occurred. Exactly what they are, I'm not going to flag, but the FACE Act has been mentioned as one of the predicates there. In other cases, the Biden DOJ used the Klan Act conspiracy charges tacked on to the FACE Act in the case of protests outside abortion clinics to bring much longer sentences. So there are a number of tools available to us. Who funded this? What else? What other crimes may have occurred? Was there a use of the wires or the mails in preparing for this event? Did anyone cross state lines to do this? All of those are potential predicates for additional federal charges.
I mean, I've just pulled up the Klan Act because this is the first time that I've heard this mentioned. This is an act that was passed in 1871, correction there, to combat the Ku Klux Klan and protect African Americans' voting rights, especially the Enforcement Act, which is known as the Force Act. So here's some of the information on screen. Would you mind breaking down for us, because we have just read the FACE Act and how this is an affinity to the FACE Act, an obvious and egregious demonstrable violation of the FACE Act, because they were entering a place of worship, harassing and threatening. We just played a video of a bearded man, who was threatening to attack the Christians that were worshiping there. So it seems like an obvious FACE Act violation. But the Klan Act here, it is on screen. First time I've heard it mentioned. Can you unpack this for us, Harmeet?
Yeah, the Klan Act is one of the most important federal civil rights statutes, and it goes back to the time when President Lincoln emancipated the slaves, and yet the southern states, Dixiecrats mainly, were refusing to give them equal rights. In fact, that you had sheriffs and you had law enforcement harassing the newly freed slaves. So the Klan Act is a law that makes it illegal to terrorize citizens, to violate their civil rights, to get together and conspire to violate the civil rights. It is often used against law enforcement, but is now used against others as well. So whenever anyone conspires to violate the protected civil rights of American citizens, the Klan Act can be used to bring a conspiracy charge. We, in the federal law enforcement parlance, call this 241 and 242 civil and criminal conspiracies. And so what the Biden administration did is if three grandmas got to...
And again, it's all the irony of Don Lemon being a person of color and gay, and again, maybe possibly charged on MLK Day. With the Ku Klux Klan, with the KKK.
Okay, let's go into the next clip here, and I think it's Don Lemon again.
Yeah, it's his reaction to this and the difference in tone after he learned that
he is desperate for desperate for notoriety, and he's an independent now, so he
has no protection.
He needs something like this in order to get his name out there, and if there's not consequences, he's going to continue to do things like this.
So Western Lensman says, quote, Don Lemon, after learning of a possible DOJ investigation, attempts to spin the story as if he wasn't aware of the anti-ICE extremist group's operational plans to storm the church.
Oh, yeah, we can play that
I know,
clip.
but I just wanted to give context as to why there's two different clips. Or two different videos.
MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism. They're getting the operation together. Again, this is an operation that is a secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to watch it live unfold here.
And remember, Harmeet Dillon was just talking about if you plan and pre-conspire a lot of these things going into churches, there can be increased sentencing. And Don
She's saying it to camera.
Is literally saying it to the camera, which is going to bring increased charges on him and the other people that were at this event. He's did more harm to their protest than good.
For this reason, it may look like MAGA coded, but there's a reason they have so many white people here. I'm just going to be honest. It's because of the operation that they're doing today. It's important to have allies, as I said, white allies here. So that is what I could say. I turned our camera off of them because they're giving some critical information here. But there we go. Everybody's ready to go. Let's go. Okay. Thank you guys for allowing me to be here. Thank you guys.
Okay.
How are you? Good to see you. We're on. We're not saying what it is, what's going on, but thank you. Tell us why you're doing this.
So,
this is Nakima Levy Armstrong. She's on the show on Friday.
Levy Armstrong, civil rights attorney, longtime activist here in the community. And, we protest and do activism in all kinds of ways. This is Operation Pull Up, more of a clandestine operation. We show up somewhere that is a key location. They don't expect us to come there. And then we disrupt business as usual. So that's what we're about to go do right now.
Yeah, and it's great that he had that video because this is going to really help with the prosecutions of this and maybe put a stop to it from other people doing similar things.
And I mean, he even says, "Oh, I did nothing. I committed an act of journalism. I did nothing wrong."
Okay, let's go into the last clip you have here.
Let me read the comments.
Did we have one more clip for this section or no?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. I did want to talk about what was going on in Germany.
Yeah, that was it. Okay.
Oh, you can go.
And then you'll talk about Germany?
Yeah.
Okay. So Trent Briggs says, isn't a church a private building? And it is a place of worship, and there's special protections that the DOJ is now going to use to go against all these idiots.
Yeah.
Trent Briggs says, Dunn is such a joke. Yeah, he's grasping at straws.
Well, he's desperate to make a name for himself in the independent sphere, and he hasn't been able to really break through, and I don't think he's going to be able to. So much so, he's literally breaking the law here.
Mm-hmm. And Trent also says they should be charged. Agreed, and they probably will be, at least.
Well, and they're going to have a really tough time because they're going to get charged, and you're going to tell me there's not going to be Christians on that jury?
Mm.
Like...
Sure. And then Ethel over at RUMBLE says, just sitting here waiting for your take on Jake Lang. Oh, we did it at the beginning.
We'll talk about it again.
Hold on. Ethel says, and not only Jake Lang, who identifies as a fierce Christian, but also his buddies who posted layering the Quran with slices of bacon.
Yeah, I don't agree with Jake Lang, and I think he's... I really think he's working for an intelligence agency because he's going to these protests and he's trying to foment violence. We've seen what happened with January 6th. The left will use it against you anytime the protest goes violent. He's there as an agitator trying to get violence to occur, which really works against you in many of these protests. I think the truckers' protest in Canada was the perfect example of how you protest, of how a peaceful protest works and how you get the public on your side. We just seen a protest there where they went into a church raising hell. It's no different than from what Jake Lang's doing when he's smacking bacon against the Quran and burning Qurans. I understand that's protected free speech, but you can expect a reaction and a violent reaction. And why do you want that to occur? Number one, yeah, maybe he wants notoriety. But number two, three-letter agencies very often want to foment violence at a lot of these protests. So I don't trust Jake Lang. And I remember when we first showed him on the show, it was a few months ago when he was just getting notoriety and he said, I have two more protests coming up in Texas and we're going to be burning Qurans and we need young men to come out with us. It's almost like that other fake group, oh man, I forgot the name, where they're in
Patriot
mask.
Front?
Yeah, it's almost like a one-man Patriot Front that's trying to get other people involved with violent acts. I would recommend nobody go support Jake Lang at these protests. I don't think it's safe, and I don't think he's doing this in good faith. And I don't think it ultimately helps bring the American people or the world on your side. Just like the people we've seen there, they're not helping their cause.
Mm-hmm. And we've also seen, and I know personally, a few influencers that got big because they were either attacked or they maybe not provoked, but clearly that is what Jake Lang is looking to do. And I don't think it's productive, and it gives a bad name, so same as the insane lefties, which is now most of them. It gives a bad name to the people that actually are trying to do something positive for the country and other countries as well. And it makes it too easy for the other side to point and say, well, but they're doing that and they're crazy and then this and that. So we don't need one on this side to be able, because while we do it to that side, where they are being crazy.
Yeah, I almost think like when we're talking about the gay community earlier, and I was saying that they need to clean up their, oh God, what did I say? They need to police their own community because the political arm of the LGBTQ has gone so far off the rail. I think Jake Lang is one of those examples of really a right-wing protester trying to foment violence and going too far. The right wing really needs to pull him in and try to say something. Well, a lot of people are, and I'm saying it now here, so I know I'm kind of doing my part. And hopefully a lot of people realize whether he's working for an intelligence agency or not, nothing good is going to come from that. The American public is going to turn against you. The general public's going to turn against you. If anybody goes out there to support him, you might be arrested on top of that and then have a criminal record for the rest of your life.
And Charlie, for example, be it for his donors or be it for his own convictions or both, he would kick these kinds of people out. And also at other MAGA rallies, etc., we used to see people kind of pulling these people out and saying, no, you're not part of this if you're being violent or doing stupid, ridiculous things.
Yeah, there were similar people. There was a similar person in the truckers protest in Canada that had a Nazi flag, and he was completely masked, and there was one camera guy right on him, and they followed him back to the hotel. He ended up working for an intelligence agency, and the cameraman was working for a major media company in Canada, and they were sent there together, and the crowd called them out and told them to leave, and they tried to blow this into this big event that it's all Nazis there. And it was one guy with a flag that was working for an intelligence agency, which was crazy. And I see a lot of similarities with Jake Lang.
Ethel also says we should not belittle Lemon Squeeze because he's actually documented the felonies. I mean, yes, his footage will be useful and also useful to incriminate himself and all the rest of the idiots that were there.
Well, and he might talk big and how he hates the white community and the colonizers and this and that, but he's married to a white guy, so he can't hate him that much.
And he also tried to get with other white guys by harassing them.
Yeah, that guy's been involved in so much sexual harassment against minors as well. It's just crazy.
As in berating women. Ethel also says, wait, guy isn't layering holy books with bacon and active free speech. So whatever reaction is expected, it should be protected action. And the police just need to be there and protect him.
Yeah, if the police are there, they do need to protect them. But I'm going to say this:
Like
you can expect a reaction, and when a lot of this is kind of the battlefield is in the media, whether it's the independent media or the mainstream media. And when the general public sees somebody smacking bacon against the Quran, burning the Quran, yelling at people, saying slurs, things like that. Yeah, it's all protected speech, but you're not going to win the general public over like that. You're actually going to turn them against you. Just like the people that were in the church, maybe let's say they stood outside the church, but they just started berating the church. Yeah, that's protected speech, but you're going to turn the general public against you when you do stuff like that. And that's what's happening at these Minnesota protests. Slowly, I think the general public is turning against the protesters because they're doing more and more acts that the general public just doesn't agree with.
Because they're harassing the general public, saying you're either with us or against us. But in the case of Jake Lang and in the case of the insane protesters, it's the same FAFO concept, like FAFO. I can't say it on YouTube, but what do you expect if something happens?
Yeah. There's a good way to protest.
I think it's useful.
There's a good way to protest and a bad way to protest, I think. And the good way to protest generally gets the general public on your side. There's going to be video cameras at all these protests, so all your actions are going to kind of be seen. And the people that are protesting against you or that you're going against, their actions are going to be seen as well. And there's usually a winner and a loser within those actions.
And Ethel says, I don't think that the dude with the man with the mustache flag has ever been identified. I saw a reward promise for anyone who can identify him, and I don't think it's ever materialized. I mean, the one who showed up at the trucker convoy.
Yeah, the cameraman was identified, and he worked for the mainstream media.
And they left together.
And he ended up being at that same hotel later that day.
Yes.
And it was the same hotel that all the RCMP was staying at.
Yes.
And there was massive security even to get in and out of the hotel.
Okay.
But again, let's go back to that truckers convoy and just remember everybody was hyper aware that they were being watched and the mainstream media wanted to get something on camera. They really watched their behavior. They brought bouncy castles out. They left a one traffic lane open for emergency vehicles. They did everything they could to be courteous to the public so they wouldn't turn public sentiment against them. And what did they do? They got worldwide sentiment on their side, so much so that became the model for protests around the world. And they still use that kind of protest, especially in the EU with farmer protests and stuff like that.
And there were also multiple other examples of crazy lefties trying to sabotage the trucker convoy, going into buildings and trying to start fires or pulling fire alarms. And they actually did also get identified, but they try to blow it up into the story of, the protesters are going into buildings and either burning or pulling fire alarms.
Yeah,
it was one of the two.
But a lot of things, they were so well organized at those protests when people started trying to burn down buildings and stuff like that. They were actually having community policing where truckers would go and community police and the crime rate went down dramatically. And then they promoted that to the media. Again, that's a good form of protest where you win the sentiment of the general public, because what you're trying to do is win the sentiment of the general public to your side. Okay.
Should we move on to...
The Middle East is the last one, I think.
Okay. Moving on to the Middle East. Still haven't changed the flag. I'm sorry. But I will change it.
And we got one story here.
I only have one story, and I think it's just like a comparison. I'm not a fan of Dubai. I will say this right off the bat. But from Live with Sandran says...
No, and I'm not going to say Dubai's perfect, but learn from maybe some of their policies and learn from what one of your policies aren't working. Not to say you're going to adopt all their policies, because a lot of policies in Dubai are shit.
Mm-hmm. Says, quote, Dubai makes Canada feel like a third world country. A lot of other countries make Canada feel like Canada makes Canada feel like a third world country. As a Canadian, you immediately feel and see the difference, especially when it comes to public safety. And that's not hard to do.
As a Canadian that's been in Dubai for a week, I can tell you already, without a shadow of a doubt, Canada is a third world country. It is unbelievable coming to Dubai and experiencing it for yourself. I highly recommend that you do. It feels like a modern nation living in 2100. It's honestly incredible. You look at the architecture, you look at the buildings, the investment that's coming out from all around the world. And that includes the investment of bringing in the people. The immigration programs here, they're incentivized. To get a visa, you have to have a job. To be part of this, you have to be contributing value to the society. Unlike many Western nations like Canada, where immigration, people come in to get the passport, to get the services, and they leech off of the taxpayer base and reduce the standard and quality of life for everyone. And that's the opposite of what's happening in Dubai. And let's not even talk about safety. There's basically non-existent crime in comparison to Canada. I'm here with my 2.5-year-old daughter and my wife, and it's incredible how safe we all feel. Walking around the streets in the middle of the night, no matter where you are, you feel safe because criminals don't do crimes here because the consequences mean jail immediately, fines, and deportation. Like, wow, matter of fact, can you believe a modern society that treats criminals like criminals would actually be a great place to live and raise a family? And I'm not saying Dubai is perfect. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is I think many Western nations should really look at themselves in the mirror and be like, what kind of ideology are we following here? We can learn things from what other people are doing. Just touch some grass in different countries around the world and you realize, man, we are so far behind. It's incredible. But really in Dubai, it's this sense of participation by everybody that's here to build a better life, to commit value to the society.
And you can kind of leave it there. And I think what the West is really, as much as I don't necessarily agree with Islam or the Quran, at least it gives some kind of moral foundation if they want to implement it, where the West does have laws, but a lot of time those laws don't have any moral grounding or moral foundation. So as the society goes further and further away from the religion and a non-moving moral foundation, it loses its way, it loses its direction, and it loses its identity. The West is really having an identity crisis, and I think it needs to find a non-moving moral foundation again. I think Christianity was that at one time, and I think it can be again.
And I agree with the whole, it's a religion or at least some kind of moral ground and foundation to build society upon. But I would be curious to ask you, now living in Mexico for a while, how do you compare it to Canada? Because I know it's better in some aspects. Of course, safety depends on how you look at safety even, but...
Well, it's a much poorer country, but I think if Canada was as equally as poor as Mexico, it would be absolute chaos. I think there is a non-moving moral foundation here, and a lot of people are Catholic here, and a lot of people are extremely impoverished, but the society still works. Now, cartels or organized crime is a completely different thing. That's off the rails here. But the fact that you can see extremely impoverished people in a society, yet they still follow a moral fabric for the most part outside of cartels, that's pretty freaking amazing. And I think Catholicism, even with its imperfections, gives a good, solid foundation to Mexico. And I think the United States would do themselves a favor by realizing that they had some of the greatest immigration for a long, long time because they had immigrants immigrating that had a similar moral foundation to them. We see what's happening in Europe now, and they don't have the same moral foundation, and it's causing massive problems. They don't want to integrate. Even when they do integrate, it just doesn't work. Yeah. It's like water and oil.
And I'm not a fan of Dubai. We know they pay influencers to talk great things about them, but you can't deny that there has been a lot of investment put in there because of the oil money and a bunch of other things. But at least they do police. You don't see people shooting up on the streets and fearing for your life because, well, me as a woman, fearing for your life because they might chase you, which has happened to me, or spit in your face, which has happened to me in Vancouver, Canada. Not once has that happened in Mexico, for example.
And there's plenty of Middle Eastern countries that don't work, that follow more radical Islam. Dubai can maybe be an example of how you get success in the Middle East. Maybe other Middle Eastern countries can implement a similar strategy. Going forward, if you can stop the conflicts that are constantly going in there, a lot of that has to do with the U.S. So if U.S. and Israel stops going into the Middle East, it brings a little bit of stability. Maybe you can slowly over time get rid of that radicalization and get a more working a form of Islam that actually works. There are some countries that have that. Saudi Arabia is another example of that. So,
but in my opinion, all Islam is radical.
No, but you're not going to...
As said by people who
yeah,
have
but you know what's more radical than that? Trying to go in there and force Christianity on a population that doesn't want it.
But that's what we're saying. Like,
you need
stop trying to democratize and Christianize where it won't work, and just concentrate on getting your own countries back together again.
Yeah, but also you do want to work with that portion of the world eventually, and they're going to trade with certain portions. So you want you want to reward the parts of the Middle East that are having Islam that actually does work well and is more peaceful. And so then the other other countries learn from that, rather than trying to force a religion on a people that don't want it.
And now we're reading comments. Before we go over to RUMBLE, MUA says, a colleague found a job in Dubai recently, but I don't think it is a livable country. People complain a lot about Dubai in YouTube, and there's horrible stories that come out of Dubai constantly.
What's it called? Dubai porta potty stories are crazy. I didn't even know what that was until I read an article, and then I went online. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, type that in, and you'll find some pretty disgusting things.
And modern day slavery and a bunch of different violations as well.
Yeah, but I will say this.
And because the regime is the one that can implement what goes and doesn't, it is all mostly dependent on the regime. So actually liberties and freedoms, I don't know how much they actually have of that.
Yeah, but as much as you want to say Dubai is bad, you can look at the rest of the Middle East. They're doing the best, and Saudi Arabia as well. I'd rather have them implement that, even with all their flaws, than go the other way, as Afghanistan or Iraq are. A lot of those problems were because of instability in Western countries coming in, though.
But also from being conquered by Islam in general, in the first place. A lot of the Middle Eastern countries did not follow Islam initially. From Ethel says, if Dubai is great, are we coming to the conclusion that Islam is the way? Was Muhammad the Prophet right about everything? That's exactly what I said. No. No. Ethel says, I've heard that women of the night feel unsafe in Dubai, and also Instagram models that end up falling into horrible traps. And Ethel says, imagine a truckers convoy in Dubai. I mean, it would be all the
it would be the equivalent of looking, because they have the pink wave in Central and South America where all these countries are liberal, and then you get, let's say you get a Bukele in El Salvador who has a completely different model. It would be like comparing El Salvador going one way compared to all the other countries going another way.
Chile now, Argentina.
Yeah, Dubai is the best you can hope for in the Middle East right now,
sadly,
especially when you compare them to the other Middle Eastern countries.
Yes, but now we are moving over to RUMBLE. We hope to see you there. Thank you so much, YouTube, and yes, that's it. Please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us out, especially here on YouTube.
Yeah, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so we can monetize. So thank you.
Thank you.